In between like G and H, I can make another cup of tea, right? I'm just checking before we get there, so I know if I can expect that or not.
We'll see how time's going.
Okay.
I'll recognize that as a possibility.
Keep it in the forefront. We appreciate that.
Password desk here, yeah.
Oh, you're reading it back?
I came together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it was locked, it was just closed, like that little wedge in there, if it slipped,
Yeah.
yeah. But Aaron came to the rescue.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. The first item on our agenda tonight is public comment. It's a chance for citizens to bring to our attention something they may wish us to hear about that would not be on a public hearing. So I will open it up for public comment. You have 3 minutes. You need to state your name and address before you begin. Anyone? Go ahead.
Do you need me to stand or anything?
You can just state your name and address.
All right, Tiffany Bailey, 2388 West, 1750 South.
Okay.
My comment tonight is about proposed zoning change that's later tonight. Do you want me to leave my comment till then or?
No, if there is no public hearing, this will be your chance.
Okay. My suggestion is to leave the zoning as it is at this time. And then, when people apply for a zoning change after somebody's bought the property, at that point, then you have control over, they can tell you what they're gonna do with it, and you have control over whether you zone it. You put everything commercial, specifically, the properties along Antelope Drive between 2350 West and 2500 West, that is directly in our backyard now. And it's very small. I don't know that you could even put something commercial there, even if you changed it to commercial. But I'd like you guys to help be our voice with UDOT or anybody that purchases that property, so that we don't have all night businesses going on in our backyards. So on the UDOT website, properties between, I don't know what road that is. 2350, but the other one directly to the east.
Oh, to the east?
Yes. Those properties are for sale right now on the UDOT website. The UDOT is selling several parcels as one lump sum for $1.6 million. And so basically, anybody who buys that has a big chunk of land and they can put whatever they want there. But there are people who've been there for a long time and don't want lights on in their backyard all night long. And I realize you guys have to balance that with, we want Antelope Drive to be accessible to businesses. That makes sense. But can we control what that is that goes in so that it's of minimal disruption to the people who've lived there already? So it's different if you buy a house and there's an existing business, you get to decide, but we've been there longer. So again, I know it's a delicate balance because we want to do good things for the city. We need income for the city, tax base, etc. But please keep the people who live there in mind as well. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. The next item on our agenda, we have a discussion. We've invited the North Davis Community Fair to discuss with us some of the programs that they have available. You want to come forward?
Yeah, where would you like me?
You're welcome to join us at the table. You're welcome to stand, whatever is better for you.
Oh, I don't know if I want to be in the hot seat.
There's no hot seat here. We're just here to discuss.
They're all cool.
Okay, I guess I'll warm it up for
And thank you for coming.
I did bring some handouts just so that you all have a visual. I didn't do a fancy presentation, so I'll just take one, pass it around. I didn't know how many to pull, so I just finished 10 of each. But yes, so I'm with North Davis Community Care. I'm a DBH employee, so a Davis Behavioral Health employee, but I coordinate prevention efforts in North Davis, which includes Syracuse City. With that being said, Syracuse City was one of our founding partners for the coalition and our effort. And so we're very grateful and thankful for this partnership. I did want to tell you all that we've revised and revamped our vision and mission. So I'd like to read those for you. Our vision is North Davis is a collaborative community that empowers youth in personal resilience and connection. And our mission, we will foster a safe and connected community for our youth by collaborating with families, schools, and local leaders to reduce the risk factors and strengthen protective factors using research-based programs and strategies. So I know that's a lot of maybe language you haven't heard before, but essentially we're just as a community focusing on what we can do to reduce substance use and mental health problems for our youth, and what we can do to, as a community and families, collaboratively, what we can do to strengthen their opportunities for a healthy, safe, and life. So with that, I was asked to come today to kind of speak to what our options for Syracuse City as far as doing something for Mental Health Awareness Month. That will be May of this year. With that, I did put together a list of not only what us as CTC can do, and the blue, this one shows you our programs that we have. These have been adopted and approved by the coalition as far as to show that they impact our outcomes, which are to reduce alcohol, vaping, and marijuana use among our youth. So these have proven research behind them, and that this is what we will be implementing as a coalition. But we also have partners like the health department and USU Extension that offer other programming and workshops that can also play a role with your division, right? With that being said, we do have Everyday Strong, which Syracuse City did host one summer of last year and had a great turnout. And that is for, if you're talking about which population within your city, it's for adults. It's focused to teach adults what they can do in a kid's life on a daily basis to help them either manage or navigate their depression and anxiety. Then we have Working Minds. Working Minds is a USU Extension workshop. This one's specifically for like an employee population, so workers or just city employees if we're talking city, Syracuse City. And this one focuses specifically on the organization and what the organization can do to help support the mental health of their employees. And then we have adult or youth mental health first aid. This was one of the more extensive ones just because it goes really in depth on just what we can do as a community to like be alert about the warning signs when someone's presenting like a mental health crisis. If there's any concerns of addiction or suicidal ideation, how to manage that. So it's you could do a 1 day thing or 2 half days, but there is an adult specific and then there's a youth specific one. So they're separate because the material is taught to their level. And then we do have an adult or a youth QPR. So just like CPR, QPR is stands for question, persuade, and refer. And this is a workshop, an hour and a half long, where people learn like to ask and look out for different signs if they feel somebody is suicidal or is having thoughts of suicide. And that one's for adults and youth. Separate but offered to both. And then we have the selfie method. This is specifically for youth, and it gives them so selfie stands for sleep, exercise, light, fun, interaction, and eating well. So that's what, but those are essentially what you need to do every day to be on the better side of your mental health. So with that, there's this workshop that the youth can do to come up with ideas on how to implement that in their life. And it just tells about the data behind that specific letter in the acronym and how it impacts their mental health. So that's what I have as North Davis Communities That Care. Whether we have the resources to offer that to the community or have a partner in the community that can come and do this.
So I was just gonna say, having sat through the CTC meetings of the last year plus, and Lisa can attest to this as well. Syracuse has always had a pretty strong commitment to CTC and when we talk about some of the turnouts we're deciding on what our goals were for the year just a few weeks ago. And, some of the questions were like, do we need more of this class? Do we need less of this class? And I would ask, is this 50% attended based on, your total census or less? And usually it was like, oh, some of these are less attended or whatever, except for Syracuse. And then she kept mentioning it, except for Syracuse. Syracuse does pretty good about some of these courses. We get really good attendance and get good turnout. So I guess the questions I would ask are realistically, how many of these could you do in 1 month without like creating burnout for you guys, fatigue for the community, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I can only speak to the ones that we as North Davis CTC have the resources and funding to offer. So with that being said, on this list I provided to you that mostly just everyday strong. We have the trained staff, materials, handouts, everything, and there wouldn't be much issue with that. The other ones, it would be a matter of connecting with the partner and asking what their availability looks like. I believe right now you still have like maybe a head start, right? Because we're still in February technically, right? And so
2 hours.
2 hours. But asking them what that looks like. I know that for like the QPR and the mental health first aid, there are trained teams ready to go, and sometimes they need sessions, right? Sometimes that's where they're lacking, is there are not enough people requesting these workshops. So I don't know that you'll get all of them in 1 month, but maybe if you shoot for like 2 of them, that could probably be a goal.
I actually don't want all of them at once. And my motivation for that is, so I went to the Everyday Strong. It was my daughter was the one that set it all up and everything, and it was fantastic. But oftentimes, mental health issues occur for different people at different times. And so I'd actually be more interested in picking a few of these and offering them on either like a quarterly or a biannual basis, so that we have something constantly on the agenda for someone in the calendar. Like I know as a city, we offer the CERT program, and we generally try and do it in the spring and the fall. And I'd actually be interested in picking a couple of these and doing a similar type thing where we have mental health training and awareness on a continuous basis. And maybe one time, I guess my question is, sometimes with CERT, we only have 4 people show up, and we say, okay, we're going to try and push it off to another. We'll try and get you guys in the fall. Would your staff be interested in doing something similar? If there's a chance that they may not teach the course if there's only 2 people there, because that's not, I won't say that's not worth their time, because this
So
is
you just need a
tremendous.
minimum, right?
Yeah.
And we have that expectation too. If we offer
Sure.
our resources, we try to shoot for a minimum.
Totally agree.
And they do a lot of, this isn't the full spectrum of everything they do.
Sure.
They're doing quite a bit in Syracuse already with our youth especially. And we've got a pretty heavy schedule. Yeah. So I think it can be coupled with what you're
Yeah.
describing. And
So I'd actually be more interested in doing this on an ongoing basis. And
One of my thoughts would be that if we're going to do a couple of things. If we don't do, I understand May is mental health awareness month. If you don't do them all at the same time, maybe you get a better turnout instead of trying, if we were to try to do 4 in the same month, maybe people would divide their interests and you get smaller crowds, which may not be what you want. You maybe want bigger crowds if you divide them across the year instead of all for 1 month.
if you had to say, if you had to pick one of these you'd like to do on a regular basis, which one would it be?
I think when you're talking about the community as a whole, you have to take a lot of factors into consideration, and one of them being the time and availability. One thing that we run into as a coalition is childcare, and that's huge for many of our families on whether they participate in programming or not. So we try as a coalition to run in for funding that supports the childcare, and that way we have that available for them when they come to our program. Now with that in mind, that kind of limits your options of if you offer a full day thing, or is it better to just shoot for an hour and a half and hopefully they find childcare, right? And so those things are things that you'll probably have to outweigh as, leadership in the community and knowing your communities and your neighbors. But personally, I think if you even start with a QPR training, which is something simple, it really does focus on those things that people can, look out for, or how to ask questions or frame questions in the way that they can assess whether that person's at risk for suicide or not, right? So if you're asking me, that would be a suggestion. And I would do both an adult and a youth just to make sure that they work with it.
Okay.
So there is to the community and the employees, could we offer 3 during May for employees? If we could work that out with their partners that they use?
Like number 3.
Yeah.
Oh,
Working on. Yeah.
so what would that look like if we, you guys not have staff that's ready to go on that one specifically? Would that require some extra?
Yeah, just because it doesn't fall within our action plan or DBH's prevention strategy, we don't host that, but we work closely with USU Extension, who offers that. And that is a 2-hour in-person workshop that they are willing to come and do. They just need to be contacted. And I'm happy to connect with Emily, ask about availability, and then whoever needs to take on the coordination for that.
Question on clarification on that. Is it geared towards, so it's a live interactive thing with all employees, or is it meant towards supervisors of employees to train them?
There's something you said seemed like it was supervisors.
So what I've been told about the workshop is that it's intended to also reflect on policies that could be changed administratively to help support the mental health of employees. So I can see it with like supervisors, but it could also be extended to everyone. So I've been told it can be flexible in that way, but it has been designed for a portion of it to focus on policy.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like that idea as an additional to whatever we do in the community, just because number one, it's not necessarily leveraging their resources as much. It's not addressing the community as much. It's focused on a specific population within our workforce. And
Yeah.
but wouldn't necessarily overtake or
Because
feel
these
like,
two different scopes,
Yeah,
for like
two different
mental health to me, it's like the community side and then our employee side.
Yeah.
So one doesn't overlap kind of the other, and it would be a separate thing. I think.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm actually curious about is, for that one specifically, if we could work with the chamber, and I know they have their weekly or monthly meetings, and maybe have this also taught as the
training.
the training they do each month for and kind of work on mental health in employees.
Would be great.
Yeah, I mean,
So
any
maybe talk
strategy
to them
that
about that.
increase employment and support for folks in a kind of tough work environment is probably not a terrible thing.
Well, and the construction industry has the highest suicidal rate than any other industry. Yeah.
Even emergency.
No, not like emergency, like our public safety, is that what you're, yeah. Mhm. And I can send the graph over this stuff, so you can share it. But,
Crazy.
I mean, with that said, also Everyday Strong has a focus on the workplace. I just didn't present that because I didn't think about it. But
Well, I think a lot of times you get the most bang if you have a friend that can help them. And so I like to focus on the QPR training. And so at a minimum, I think we should try and get the QPR in. We want to try and work working minds into either the city or into the chamber. I think that would be a good idea. And then I am curious about the selfie. I know you teach that during Everyday Strong. But I almost thought it kind of didn't go enough in depth. Is that something that we can push into, we can offer to schools?
I was gonna say, that's a school, that's a children, I mean, I remember the acronym so well, but it also gives them that power of knowledge to say this will happen.
I actually have that acronym in my phone to remind me. So,
I
because of the Everyday Strong training. And so,
think Amy, Allred taught the one at Syracuse, and she also teaches self.
That would explain that.
And so that's why she's familiar in both, but yeah, so, Amy Allred is an instructor for the selfie method, and she does it through New Hope, which is part of Weaver State.
And are they already connecting them to like on an ongoing basis to like our high school and high school?
Or do we need to facilitate a relationship?
Yeah, that's,
I would have to ask more about that. From what I understand, it's a requested workshop. It's not integrated to any programming or activities already done in the school. I think because I don't know, and don't quote me on this, but I can see where maybe it can fall underneath the Hope Squad. But I don't know how much partnership or implementation has been done there.
So if we were to host a QPR training, what size space and what's your expectation of a turnout for that? Are we talking a room this size? Are we talking an auditorium? What are the needs for the facility?
Yeah, so for QPR training, my understanding on this, and I would have to just double check with our partners at the county health department. But my understanding is that the training for people or for amount of people between 20 to 30. So not a huge group size, but also you want to have it intimate so that they can practice this skill. So it's intended for a group size of that big. And then it would be an hour and a half. Of course, if y'all decide to host it, they would come and set up and do what they need to do for that. But, I mean, more details, if you have a date, I could inquire about a date. If what day of the week you're thinking, that would also be good to know.
Well, thank you. I think we'll talk more about this and see if we can calendar something and request some dates. And,
Get a couple of these on the list.
maybe one or two. Wow.
Yeah, and since I have your ears.
You're here.
So like I said, Syracuse has been great to work with, and we consider you all a founding partner. And we have used your space and facilities for our meetings and other CTC activities in the past. We kind of steered away from Syracuse City a little bit because coalition members wanted to gather in other locations to engage and activate our communities, because we are 5 cities in the coalition. But with that being said, the coalition has requested to come back to Syracuse, and I mean, it doesn't blow my mind because we have most of our volunteers are from Syracuse City, right? So it's just close to home. But with that being said, we would like to request for use of space as the coalition at no cost if possible, so that we can facilitate our bi-monthly meetings as of now here at the community center. And that's where we met this month, and where we plan to meet the rest of this year.
So by month, you mean twice a month or every other month?
Every other.
I never understand it.
I think semi-monthly is twice a month and bi-monthly is every other. So I think she said it right.
But it's like 2 hours at most, more like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
You
So-
feel like
Well, I
that.
do clean up and set up so that we make sure that leave everything like we found it. But yeah.
so actually, that would be an action of the council. So I have to put that on future meeting and advertise before we take a vote. But we will take
Fine.
up the question in the next meeting.
I just thought I'd bring it up since I'm here already, and I'm
That's fine.
happy to do
No, we appreciate
whatever I
the
need to
request.
do.
Might as well get it taken care of now, right?
Yeah, I did bring business cards for y'all if you want to reach out to me. Oh, yeah, okay, so, and I actually just confirmed that.
Okay,
today.
I wasn't a bit.
Not mine, but Syracuse Police Department was, I guess, put out as an option for our Big Brothers Big Sisters fundraising event, which is essentially a clothing drive, like a donation type basis. I don't know if you've seen the big green not dumpsters, but they call them like a
Collection bins or.
yes. But it's that focused on like a partnership. So North Davis CTC has decided to do this year with Syracuse City and Clearfield City. Last year we were, because we did a quick turnaround, we only did Clearfield. But essentially what it is we partner with our police departments who are already working on Take Back Day, which is the clean out your medicine cabinet thing, right? And so we partner with them to do a clean out your closet, and we call it a spring cleaning event, right? And so any donations of clothing items, bedding, towels and whatnot, it can be dropped off that day. And then Big Brothers Big Sisters comes and collects that, and they utilize that as us as a fundraiser, but they utilize that pounds of whatever they collect as a community partnership and collaboration. So that is something that was just confirmed today. So it will happen on April 22nd, and I'm just waiting to work out some details with Chief Advocate.
Yeah, it'll be 2 hours or 4 hours total, like 10 to 2. And we'll need to be somewhere where we can have some visibility, and then we'll have like CTC staff basically monitor that the stuff gets in the bins.
Yeah.
And there's no map.
You said April 28th,
Yeah.
right?
At 22nd.
Second.
And Big Brothers Big Sisters will pick up and the bins and drop them off and pick them up. So nobody needs to do anything.
Okay,
All right.
we will get that word out. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry about the same time.
That's what I'm thinking.
Seriously, April 22nd.
Well, maybe you know,
It might first time with a lot to ask her.
some people's closet might be a disaster.
That's fair.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'll leave these here with any questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for being.
I am going to move us on. Next item on our agenda is a request from Robinson Waste to amend and adjust the rate. We're going to have Steve present this item. And I know that somebody's here to get the.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So Robinson Waste has sent a letter to the city formally asking for a CPI adjustment to their garbage rates. In the packet on page 4, you can see that letter that was sent. They're asking for a 6% increase, which matches up with the CPI table from the packet as well. This would be for our first can or second can in the green waste. You can see the price comparison in there from the current rate to the proposed rate. That's basically it.
Council, thoughts?
We just do this.
We just went out for rebid. This would be an increase after the rebid.
Didn't we just already sign that contract?
We signed it in April of last year, so it's been about a year.
There's so much more than that. It does.
This would go into effect April 1st of this year, so it wouldn't be.
Actually, Steve, it's May 1st. May 1st, long day.
Exactly.
Made it.
Thoughts, council?
I mean, it's expected.
It's made
In my opinion, that's what's happening in the world. It's expected, so
Good.
everything's increased.
All right, so this will be up for a vote on our March meeting, and it would go into effect in May. So you don't have to decide tonight, but just let you know that's where we're at. Does anybody have any questions?
Then this is specified in our agreement that allows for it.
That allows them to request it. It's still up to you to vote. Right.
So can we, I guess I would like to understand the motivation for the increase. I know, I guess I would have thought a lot of the wages, I don't think wages have gone up significantly in the last year. I know they did prior year. We caught up with a lot of that.
Wages have gone up.
I guess, is that the driving factor, or is? Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
All right, so we'll recognize Robinson Waste for the question. The question at hand is, what's the justification for the wage or the cost increase?
First, in the agreement, it says that we are eligible for this in CPI. But the justification is year over year, our cost increase over 33% in everything. The fuel surcharge covers part of it. The fuel surcharge doesn't cover the increased cost of oils, tires, hoses, everything related that fuel surcharge we got on invoices for parts. Parts alone we've been up over 33%. Our wages have probably increased about 15 to 20%. If you're trying to hire a truck driver for Class B or Class A, CDL, it's almost impossible. In January, the federal government changed their regulations. We can't even train drivers to get that. They have to go through a course that costs them $3,000 to $5,000 over multiple weeks in order to get their license. So it just made it even worse. So it is just our a garbage truck 2-3 years ago was about 350,000. They're over 500,000 if we can get these days. We requested last year, we were able to get one, we're going to get two this year. It's the cost of everything is just not astronomical.
Okay, thank you.
Well, your people do a great job.
So we know that in the city that we've had that problem with CDL licenses as well.
Yeah.
That the regulations have gotten crazy, so. All right. I'm gonna move us on, but we'll put this on for the next agenda.
Thank you.
Item E, discussion regarding our participation in the community development block grant. Wanted you, in the packet, you see a letter that was sent to me and Brody with copy, discussing the fact that the CDBG grant is going to be renewed by the county, and we have the opportunity to opt out. I don't know that there's any real advantage to opt out, because it's just an opportunity to participate. A lot of our businesses don't qualify, but if they did, we wouldn't be eligible if we opted out. So I wanted to bring it before you. I didn't feel like it was right appropriate to just pass this up. So, Brody, did you have anything more you want to talk about? You've got a lot to say.
If there's any questions, and yeah, if you do nothing, it means we stay in the pool with the county.
If we opt out, it means that if one of our businesses wants to apply, they're not eligible because we opted out as a city.
It's nice for me to sit back and think, I'm gonna do nothing.
They think they're still opted out, is that right?
They opted out so that they could do their own program.
So we
So,
don't have the means to do that, right? It's like
Right.
we have to add staff in order
Yeah.
to do it.
and that I think is the key. The reason they opted out is they felt like it justified that they qualify so often, it justified them going direct. I don't think it does for us, but that's just my opinion. I mean, we would have to add staff if we were to go direct, and that would be probably the only reason to opt out.
The other thing is, a lot of the eligibility doesn't apply to Syracuse because of the median household income in Syracuse, that's so high.
And you get too many of those grants.
I would say the other reason that, well, talking with Mayor Petro, the reason that Layton went direct is so many of their businesses qualify. They felt they would get more of the lion's share of the funding by going direct because everything they qualified would go to them. We do have to split it up with the rest of the county, but like Brody mentioned, and I've mentioned, we don't qualify very often because our median income is higher.
The ROI is minimal here. I think we just move forward with the block grant and let's move forward.
All right, so we will move on. The next item on our agenda, item F, we're going to move into the discussion of our planning items. Item number 1 is recommendation from planning commission. Consider zoning amendments of property located along Antelope Drive. So we've heard this before, and the situation that's up. Any thoughts in general from the council on this?
Early on in the discussion, I pretty much thought the exact same thing, that if you, I mean, I even went as far as recommending we rezone it all as agriculture so that we can completely decide what goes in there, but I think this accomplishes the same. Is and then allowing the neighbors, if there is an opportunity for a neighbor to want to purchase, they'd have first right of refusal, I assume, if they're an adjacent or previous property owner.
Not necessarily.
On,
If they've opted for that.
Yeah.
When they sold it.
It was part of the property.
the existing property owner.
Yeah, adjacent don't have any.
Yeah.
That are better than everybody else.
Why did they offer that to us on 1100?
Well, because cities get the first right.
No, I was saying like first, they offered it to the adjacent neighbor. Or they-
Oh, we decided to,
was that what
because
it
he
was?
was interested. He approached the city and said he was interested, so we as a city decided to offer that to that person. Because it made sense. Didn't end up going that way, but it made sense to
Yeah,
us. And
But either way, I still stand with the same position. That doesn't change my opinion.
The general plan right now has it all as commercial, right? But the actual zoning map is still listed as residential. I agree. I think this gives you the most control. And I mean, likely a lot of it will end up going commercial, but it does give you the ability to.
So one consideration that I have is since we have the map as one thing and the actual zoning or designation is another, that means that any applicant's going to have to apply. And actually, I like that. I think that that's probably a stronger position because it sends the message that it's the intention is commercial. What I'm worried about is people trying to gobble these up and say these have to become high density housing. And I don't think that that's the option for every property. I think that we certainly have the option to have multiple uses, but if it becomes purchased by somebody who has that intent, I don't think that, I don't want people to under false pretense say, oh yeah, this is absolutely zoned for high density housing.
Well, I think that this is just as was discussed, it gives us the best amount of control with also the understanding that I know we talked about being shovel ready, but this to me is outside of that realm because it's already expected to be commercial. So that to me is a portion of shovel ready. It's already identified what we want it to be in the future. And it also keeps our tax base what it should be for the people who own it, as well as it gives us the amount of control. Because just because something is zoned as commercial doesn't mean that every one of those commercial uses fits in those slots. So I think that it's crucial for us as land use authorities to keep as much control over what goes where, and especially for citizens who've lived here for a long time. And I appreciated your thought of, you understand that there's a balance here, right? And we have taxes and services to render and that have to be paid for, and we have to facilitate ways to do that. But ultimately, we want to put the best thing there that benefits everybody. And I think there are plenty of spaces that can be for businesses that might have more nuisance to them, that are further away from homes and houses and for citizens. But I think that this gives us the best ability to control as much as we can, with also the understanding that this is what we're intending it to be eventually.
Any other thoughts? Okay, based on what I just heard, I think that we will just take no action, and this will not come up on the next agenda. You have agreed? Yeah. All right. Just FYI, though, we know that in the next year, UDOT will be selling these properties, and so we will end up with applications.
Yeah, and that's historically let the landowner come up with proposals what they want to do in the land. And I think that works well.
And the zoning determination placed upon that.
Okay, next item, application for consolidation of city council or consultation with city council. Not consolidation, I'm thinking of the wrong one. Okay, Salt Edge, so this would be CW Land, has come and asked to council or talk with council. So CW Land, you're welcome to join the table and tell us what you'd like to get our input on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mon and City Council. My name is Chase Freeman, representing CW Land. We appreciate the opportunity to meet and get your feedback, your consultation. We know this is not a binding vote. This is not a formal proposal. This is an informal discussion to try to get feedback and consensus from council and try to understand where there's common ground and what we can do to help create a unique project. So just start the Diamond family, they've owned this property for quite a while, and obviously they have their property rights. They intend to develop this property. One thing is certain, they have their property rights. This property will be developed, whether it's in Davis County or in Syracuse City. We would love and wish nothing more than to work with you and your staff to have a project that's really a mutually beneficial project for the community and all stakeholders. And we feel that bringing it into the city is going to be better served by you, your residents, your tax base. We feel that collaborating with you will bring the most benefit to your residents. By just kind of run through some of our key points in this project, community amenities. There's over 40 acres of open space in this project. There's over 31 acres of wetland area that's preserved. We are proposing multi-use trails, a park, community theming, trail connections to the existing neighborhoods, a pocket park, and then improved access to the city pond, which the city currently already owns. We're proposing to allow access to that and try to improve that amenity for the community. All of this would be fully maintained by the HOA. We're also proposing an RV park, 120 RV parking stalls that would be a second kind of sealed off portion of the project that would be separate from the residential component. But that would offer, overnight use for RV parking and for RV users next to, Utah's second most visited state park, Antelope Island. So it's a great opportunity to enjoy that amenity. We know that there are some benefits of being so close to Antelope Island, and we feel it would bring tax base to the city. We would have landscape buffers to create a separation between the property owners and RV users. And then we did a study, a revenue study showing by Dayon Eskich, who's estimating a probable generation of about $366,237 annually in property taxes. Obviously, that's an estimate based on his projections, but we feel that this could be an annual bellwether for the city that could help bring in a good tax base and still offer a great amenity package for your residents. One thing about the residential component, we're proposing R1 zoning, which is low density residential lots. In R1 zone, as 12,000 square foot minimum lots. So these would be large lots. We're not proposing, postage stamp lots or high density housing or townhomes or any of that. These are big estate lots with beautiful surroundings and scenery, access to amenities, full HOA maintenance, CC&R enforcement to protect home values and community aesthetics, an attractive and desirable estate product. This is a product that we feel would fit right at home here and be consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. We're not trying to go in and reinvent the wheel and do something the residents aren't going to like. We want to be consistent with what's already there. And then just getting to the point of feasibility and utilities, which I know is a concern for some of you, and we want to just highlight really the sewer we know is one of the bigger questions. We're proposing private streets that would be 100% private ownership that would be maintained by the HOA along with all private utilities, including sewer. We would propose a low pressure sewer system throughout the development within the private right of way with E1 grinder pumps at each home to push wastewater to 1200 South, where it will connect with the existing gravity system and then gravity flow into the city system that then goes down to the treatment center down south. The sewer system will be part of and maintained by a special service district. So we're not putting this on the city. We don't want, any liability to be put on the city in terms of maintenance of this infrastructure. The special service district would be responsible for that. And, we would make sure there's adequate funding and that, all users are helping fund that special service district. Syracuse City would have no legal liability regarding sewer and private infrastructure. And we would make sure we comply with North Davis Sewer District standards. And then about the floodplain, we know some of this property has the FEMA floodplain line on it, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but anything below 4217 elevation is considered below the floodplain. And there are a small handful of lots on our proposal. It's about 6 or 7 lots that have portions of their property under 4217. but they're not off by much. It's about a foot of fill we would have to bring in to raise 6 or 7 lots up. And that would allow us to not have to require flood insurance. Those residents wouldn't have to have flood insurance. They wouldn't have a devalued property because of a floodplain. We would work with FEMA and update that map, do a map revision with FEMA, and make sure that every single lot in this project would be above the 4217 elevation line. And then wetland areas, we're pretty much avoiding almost all of the wetlands. There are a few points where the roadways would have to clip small sections of the wetland, but we would work with the Army Corps and do an Army Corps wetland mitigation permit, and most likely, give a credit to a wetland bank, where we create wetland. So any wetland we, remove, we would create somewhere else. And we feel that we're trying to recognize the geological and the environmental environment that we're in and the surroundings that are around us, by avoiding problematic areas. And just in conclusion, the Diamond property can and will be developed. The development offers an attractive offering of amenities for the community. The residential lots are very low density, consistent with the neighborhoods around, and the property can be serviced by all required utilities with zero liability to Syracuse City. And we just welcome any comments you have, feedback.
Councilman?
So can you delve a little bit more into the sewer system plan? Yeah, so each property would have an individual grinder pump, but would that go to any sort of a lift station or?
Yeah, and I've got my engineer here, Nick Mingo, to answer some of those technical questions.
Hey, Nick, you want to be recognized? Yeah.
You can do, we can make room for you. Or you
No,
can
I'm
start from
good.
there.
So low pressure system, yeah, each home has an individual pump that pumps into a main street that's pressurized all the time. That pressure moves up to where it can connect to a gravity system. So there's no lift station.
Okay.
It's a pressurized line.
It is. And the benefit is, however many homes there end up being are the number of pumps they're pushing. So there's a redundancy, there's a fail safe. If one person's goes down, the lift station's not down to the community.
So if there's a breach in that system because of utility work, which happens regularly in the system, that would be a crew geyser.
No, there's pressure valves, pressure is around this, it would almost instantly shut off, similar to, well, not quite similar to gas, because gas mains don't always do that. There's fail safes in the system for that.
Can you explain them?
All
How they work, well, like what kind, how do they work?
valves. I can't get into all it.
So in that valve code, it's
a
all,
pressure valve.
anything within that part of the line can't be, or can't access that until it's repaired, correct?
Correct. Yeah, there's going to be, if there were something to hit a line, and then yes, that line's out of service until it's repaired.
So depending on where it's hit, the whole community could be out of service until it's repaired.
Yes.
Does that ever happen now
Yes,
to our, so we have just,
not in our system, but it has happened within the district. So where there's been a system that's been shut down, it has to be bypassed, and that is considered an emergency procedure, but it happens regularly because, and you have to roll crews for that because of utility work or road work or things like that.
The benefit to this system is, since there's a pump at each home, there's also a wet well. It's a tank to pump from. That tank is designed to have a certain amount of storage. So if your system's not working, you're not going to take a shower, you're not going to do a load of laundry, you're not going to flush the toilet. So each home would then have a reserve that can fill that tank.
This happens right now in West Point, and the mayor of West Point relayed to me that he's on one of those systems and has people that run down his street and say, the line's down, nobody use it. I'm not sure I want to live on that street.
So I guess, speaking to the point that this is going to likely be developed in the county regardless, can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, our preference obviously is to, I mean, these are residents that are neighboring Syracuse City. They're gonna shop in your grocery stores. They're gonna be in your, you know, school systems, and it makes logical sense for these people to be residents of your city. But certainly, you know, there is an option, there is an avenue to develop within the county. Now, Davis County does not want to be in the development business. They don't, if anything, they're trying to push unincorporated parcels into the cities. They don't want to be developers. And that's fair. I mean, but there is a legal technical way to develop within the county if we absolutely had to. And so that's why we're saying, look, it's going to happen one way or the other. Let's work together. Let's collaborate in good faith and come together and, you know, with some ideas that check a lot of your boxes. And you know, this is an avenue that would allow us to move forward. And our preference is to be within the city.
I guess my concerns are that we've had plenty of experiences where the city picks up the bill for properties that have been developed in the county, and over time they don't have curb, they don't have gutter, they don't have sidewalk. And we had to pick up the pieces over time. We see that along Gentile and in other areas, and then county's building standards aren't necessarily our building standards. And so if this property gets developed regardless, and we have to pick up the pieces down the road, it's our taxpayers who bear the burden down the road to make it right size back to the standards that we want here, or we live with some different standards.
We're also offering emergency services either way. It's not like we say, too bad you're not part of the city, we won't come and serve you. So I think, I mean, looking at this, it looks beautiful. There are some wonderful assets here, especially we wanted the RV park. And when George's talked about this ever since I've known him on the council. And I think everybody appreciates the R1 and the trails. And I think our biggest hangup is concerned over the sewage, you know, obviously. Foodvisor is not something anybody said, let's get one of those. And so I think we're just looking for some.
Someone listened us or running down the road. Slide down. I would, yeah.
I will say, as far as what I'll call we're gonna call this the Syracuse Fund. I guess I thought there'd be a little more access to it. As of right now, the only way to access it is by one of the trails, which is great. I guess I was hoping to have some type of parking to be able to access that by citizens as a second trail that they want to take their paddleboard or canoe out on. I would like to see a little more access to that.
I'd like it a little more access, but not like open access, just because it is not a ginormous pond.
Sure.
I mean, one or two paddleboarders.
It is stocked with fish right
Oh, I
now.
know, I'd like to catch some.
And Jensen.
But-
Well, okay, but it's privately stocked. I don't think that we have access to that. It's being stocked by an individual, so
True.
I don't think that it's open season right now. But I want to.
But isn't it still our fault?
It is still.
It is still our bond,
So
so.
it's kind of weird, or like,
So here's another, you know, I appreciate the developer says this will happen one way or another, but I contest that legally it can be developed in the same way if it's in the county. The sewer district has a very rock solid legally challenged and upheld agreement that if the waste does not go through a city, they will not take it. So that means that the only option would be on this property septic. And then they manage it truly on their own. And they would have to come and pump the septic waste that they hold on their own property. They cannot freely discharge to the North Davis Sewer District without going through a city. That is absolute.
Tell me about the septic then. Is that a possibility? Is that an option?
I mean, technically, yes. I don't think that's anyone's preference. I don't think future residents and future homebuyers, that's their first choice, but
Why
technically.
is that? I mean, because I know that a lot of places that don't have access to the sewer and stuff, that they do septic. So what are the drawbacks?
Well, to give you an idea, we've got a project up in Huntsville that has septic, and it's a septic system, but those are 3-acre lots. And so you have it's usually designed for larger lots in very rural areas where there's, 30-acre lots are big lots relative to the city, but they're not big enough usually to handle their own individual septic on each individual lot. You could look at some type of community septic system. And I'm sure, engineering wise, there's a lot of different things you could do. But, we want to work with the city. We want to find a solution that works. And, this is all conceptual, we're not submitting for preliminary plat or final plat. We're not doing engineering review comments. That will happen obviously as part of the traditional subdivision process. But we would work with staff, your public works departments. We would do everything we can to check every box, check every fail safe, and to make sure that we're in compliance with your code, with North Davis Sewer District, and et cetera. And so I think there is a way forward. What we have tonight is a preliminary proposal. It's a concept plan.
I have a question on septics. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how, when you're so close to the floodplain and the water table, how will the septic system even work?
It's a different design, but if you look at like the Oakley Valley, Camas Valley, Woodland, Francis, all those valleys are basically flooded pastures. All of those are septic.
Really?
And sometimes they're built above ground, but there's MBR, which is a membrane bioreactor. There's not same filters. There's different. You have to treat the water more before it goes into the ground. Is the general concept. So that's what being adjacent to the Great Salt Lake and
So
and everything else. That would be how that would be done.
okay. So just as a follow-up, I'm just looking at the business case. So on average, between the special service district and any other things that you're gonna have to do are these houses still gonna be affordable at all with both of those things? I'm assuming the HOA cost is gonna be high because it's gonna have to be covering a special service district, and then the additional risk these people will be taking on, plus you have to put basically an additional appliance in each home to manage the waste. Are these
Are we gating this
Are you-
community?
Well, are you gonna be able to sell these houses? Obviously you are, you wouldn't be presenting this.
Yeah, no, and it's a good question. We, it'd have to pencil for us. The economics would have to work. We haven't submitted bids for infrastructure. We have general ideas as developers, having, done this before and we do this every day. We generally know, but ultimately, yes, there's a way forward economically, or we wouldn't probably be here, but we want to make sure that there is a path forward. And if we get consensus on this project and we can find a middle path forward, then yes, I think there is. And certainly there's HOAs all over this state. It's almost impossible to find a community that doesn't have an HOA anymore. But yeah, they're going to have a little bit of a bump in their HOA premium over a different community that just has a pickleball court. Sure, a little easier to maintain a pickleball court than
A little bit of a bump?
yeah.
Well, it would probably have to be front loaded. I have a concern with HOA in general, because first of all, they aren't really, we just had something go through the legislature this week that was regarding, can they be a taxing entity if they aren't elected? And the answer is no, resoundingly no, we can't allow that to happen. And so, what, can you explain a little bit what the special service district entails and how
The
that's
HOA,
funded?
so let me just be clear, the HOA will not govern the special service district. And a special service district, we just sought legal counsel on this out at the North Davis Sewer District. And the word that came back was a special service district within the special service district would have to be appointed by the special service district that governs it. So you would have to get acceptance from the North Davis Sewer District to even have one. So that's an obstacle that has yet to be presented.
Who's funding that special service district then?
It would have, in this case, it would have to be only the homes in this area, because to do it otherwise, you would be now taking the 8,000 homes we have and putting the burden of these 88 homes on them. And I don't think that's fair at all.
Because typically then what happens with an HOA is they've got an estimate, because this has already happened on a business that I bought, it's in an HOA. They set an HOA price and then you realize, oh crud, our costs are, my HOA fee is double what it was first set at. And so I think those HOA costs on a project like this can run away pretty quick.
It would have to end up being a taxing entity, not an HOA. Because an HOA can fail.
And they
the sewer
do.
district, yeah, and the
Yeah.
sewer district cannot.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the risk is on us bringing this to the market. I mean, we're not going to deliver this to the market if we think no one's going to buy it. And obviously, we would have to disclose and put in our CCNRs, this is the breakdown of the HOA, here's the budget, here's how the entity works, here's how the special service district works. There would be all of that outlined in covenants and CCNRs.
But for how long do you maintain that after you?
Well, I mean, it's those covenants run with the land, right? They're recorded against the property in perpetuity.
And
And
not with the developer, once the landowners have the land.
well, once individual property owner, they can't amend those CCNRs unless the original declarant gives them the rights, or there's a certain, vote usually in HOA law. I think there has to be like a 3/4 vote by all the homeowners to amend CCNRs, but not an attorney, I don't want to get into the weeds on that, but
I feel like this property is very romanticized in a way that it looks beautiful. It smells so bad out there. There are mosquitoes out there horribly. These are going to be very, very expensive homes, and wealthy people don't usually appreciate those two combos. But I don't know, I'm not a wealthy person moving out there. So that's would be your job. But from my perspective, just and the sewer situation is not, I'm not a fan.
I'm sure that
Not.
that's something you were considered, right?
You tell people that like. it's
yeah, I mean,
horrible smell.
it's no secret that Syracuse abuts the Great Salt Lake. And, I live in Layton and, when the lake was higher, the water was higher, you'd get a storm and you'd smell it all the way to East Layton. And I think people know, they know what they're getting. They know if they drive out to Syracuse or, West Syracuse, they know there's, if you live by the sewer district plant, there's going to be somewhat of a sewer smell occasionally.
Well, I guess let's go back to you're bearing the burden of.
Yeah, we carry the risk as the developer.
Yeah,
So here's a couple concerns I have, because like I said, I think the development's beautiful. I think it looks good. But so we would be annexing land into Syracuse, which otherwise we wouldn't have. And so well, I realize there's gonna be, there's talks, an HOA, special sewer district, those types of things. Any problems that arise that those things are not resolving, those citizens are coming to the city. And they can approach the city to change anything that is established with this community if the community is not self-sustaining, is not curing the issues. And so they could do that by,
Unintended consequences of it.
that's my biggest concern is what are the future pitfalls that we're not anticipating, that while an HOA and a special sewer district may say, okay, upon development, this is going to take care of it. What happens when you have if a larger issue arises and we have these citizens reaching out to the city and wanting
That's what will happen.
a different solution?
That's the only option.
Well,
we'll really have.
I mean, that's like a little
The
bit.
issue that
concern.
they also have is 10 of these homes will be in West Point. Is that correct?
No, this is.
We
entire
have to
project is
annex the
Syracuse
whole
City.
thing.
There's,
So there would be a contesting, there could be a contesting because 10 of these homes right now are zones that would go into West Point. They'd have to relinquish that annexation rights.
Are we even addressed that?
I mean, we have not drawn an annexation plat. We're not submitting for that now, but ultimately, roughly, there's 200 acres of this property. Roughly half of it is in Syracuse or could be in Syracuse, very easily annexed. The other half.
I would say 3/4. It looks like everything up to 1200 south.
Yeah, everything on this concept plan we are proposing that would be annexed into Syracuse City. There is a portion of property to the north that we would eventually someday propose to West Point City if it ever became feasible or possible. It's more of a long-term horizon, but everything you see on this screen right now is what we're proposing to annex into Syracuse City.
How many of these homes could be supported by gravity fed sewer? Ballpark.
How much dirt do you have?
Zero.
You have.
If we had enough, we could do it all. And I'm not trying to be,
Even more cost for the homeowner.
but I mean, we haven't analyzed it. I mean, that's definitely an option.
As it currently situated, none of them can.
No, well, no, not true. There's sewer close by.
The southern portion.
And I don't know how many and how deep and how,
So probably a small percentage.
yeah, I mean, it's a minority for sure.
So when you talk about bringing fill in, why don't we just raise the house in general? I mean, is that something? I'm just thinking of gravity, like I'm just thinking in terms of going to South Carolina, and we've got houses on stilts everywhere. And of course, they're close to the ocean there, but is that?
Overhead sewer, that would change your food either.
More of a food.
The big guys are the whole need.
It would be a food shower.
Have the rating.
So,
It's such a thing based in fear and not understanding the system. Sure. I mean, I feel like that's.
I understand.
So I'm actually not opposed to the you say that? Concept, I could not think of that word. I'm not opposed to the concept. I'll be honest, we want to get access to whoever owns this land. We would like access to the pond. I love the trails and the parks, but we do need to understand the mitigating factors with the sewer. You can tell that that's kind of our stress. I guess, how do you transition from a pressurized system to a gravity fed system?
I think in the manhole. The pressurized system would end in a manhole in 1200 south.
Just get high enough.
Yeah.
So have you been involved in building these, where has it been?
So one in Farmington, one in Mill Creek, right, just right next to Skyline High School, and one in Park City.
How large were those?
The one in Farmington was 44 half-acre lots. The one in Mill Creek was on the way back 20 lots, 8,000 square foot or so. The one in Park City was several hundred 10-acre estate lot.
And these are all the same, they have their own grinder pumps that pump into it.
And, you know, other sewer districts, we can go meet with Central Davis. I could get, they use them all the time. They know the standards, they know how to approve them. They accept them as their system. Central Davis.
The director that came here and spoke to you used to be employed by Central Davis before he came here, and he will absolutely not take these ever again because of the problem that they created.
So have you seen problems? Are they contacting you after their issues?
I never heard one thing. And I mean, I've been involved with 3 compared to the 500 regular sewer systems.
It's a financial time and an all-hour service cost.
Sorry, what was
It's a,
that?
it's a financially driven all-hour service cost
For the special service.
for the
district.
special service district to maintain. The cost of having properly certified employees round the clock is exorbitant.
So I guess what I'm hearing 2 conflicting stories about, because if this is gonna come regardless, I want to have the standards and everything of Syracuse. On the other hand, if there's not a risk of it coming in, this land is not an ideal place for a home. I'm just gonna be honest. I mean, it's a lot of this was very close to was lakefront property just a decade ago,
And maybe
2
after
decades.
this year.
And maybe after this year,
I doubt it'll be after this year, but if we have more of these years, again, I can't predict the future. So I do want to understand exactly, you know, I want to make sure we're doing the best thing for any residents that live here. Like I say, I'm not opposed to the sewer system as long as we can do it safely and reliably. But I do think we need to make sure that we're considering all the different avenues of how to move forward on this. So I guess I'd like to understand, one, if you can get, again, obviously we want more details in the sewer and examples and how reliable these are historically. And then also I would love to see what you see as how this will move forward if we do nothing, because I think that's important to understand as well.
And I'd like to more information on what the special service district, what's required of them and kind of the cost breakdown so that we can understand how that will impact the potential homeowners. I hate to have it be that somebody bought a home and then walked away from it or foreclosed on it, and then you're left with the system that corrupts all the others. You know?
Yeah, no, we're happy that we can put together a breakdown of what a anticipated homeowner cost might be. We could put together, you know, some sewer profiles and again, this is all conceptual. When we get to preliminary plat, usually when we get into the weeds more with specific details with the city engineer and the city planner. But we're happy to address as much as we can up front to answer some of these questions. And if we can, you know, make you feel comfortable as council members and make you feel like you said, you're getting the best this property has to offer while mitigating any potential risk. And I think that's something we're happy to work with you on.
I guess what the big thing risk is, I don't want to be that city that says,
Sorry.
you knew what you were getting into, sucks to be you. And I don't want to be that guy.
And I'm worried about the stability of the ground, honestly. We have spent 3 years at the sewer district doing studies out on this land, and I don't think these would not sink. But I don't know, I haven't been on this exact site, but we have been taking, our teams have been out there and reported consistently that this ground is unstable. And
Isn't that something the Army Corps of Engineers would be involved in?
we definitely would be. And I think before we ever accepted annexation, we should know what the result of that is. Maybe it's different, but what I'm being told by the people who went out and conducted this study is that you can just sink just being on this depending on the day. And in this specific area, they had to take samples. So,
And you know, that's what we have, geotechnical engineers and we would hire. And
but have you employed them yet? You know.
yes. Yeah, we're happy to share geotechnical reports. We're happy to, I mean, we would not risk our company's reputation, our personal reputations in risk lawsuits just to stick homes here. I mean, ultimately, we want a product that works, that the homeowners can be happy with, that's going to be safe. And every geotechnical engineer is going to have their specifications for how to set the footings and foundations and how to dig and how to make sure we're below frost depth and how to make sure we have the right compaction so that there are no soil issues. And it doesn't mean it's foolproof, doesn't mean things can't happen, but we follow the engineering requirements.
And before annexation, I would also say there has to be an outline for how this special service district would work. Because in my understanding, I don't think it's legal unless it's within the city. And that's what we've been told by Belshock, which is an attorney for the sewer district.
I guess I'd like to understand that as well, if you can help us out there.
So I think
Because yeah, our goal is to
consult
not,
on
currently our code prohibits us being part of the special service district, so we don't want to go down what could be an illegal path.
Well, I think ultimately.
There was a joke coming out.
Everybody wants to have success here, right? And I don't for a second think that you're gonna try and dash your development just and walk away. But I do think that there are a lot of T's and I's that have to be addressed.
It's like any development. Sometimes, you know, even the most simple development, the smallest project can have tons of, and you've seen it, you know, the projects you see every day. So absolutely, we would have to follow the same process any other development would have to follow. And we understand there may be even more scrutiny and more eyeballs watching the I's and the T's, and that's fine. We do this every day. So we'll get our engineers involved. We'll go and we can get those details. We can come back to provide those to you. We're happy to come back either as another consultation, give you an update, or you know, however you want us to approach.
Okay, well, I think you've got at this point some, what's that? Yeah, please, bro.
If I could just ask a question related to the RV park proposal.
Yeah.
I don't have an RV, I don't stay at RV parks, but I've seen a few. And there's a variety of, you know, how they look. Some can look fairly nice and some are pretty trashy. And this is kind of on a sort of like a very visible
Sure.
highway in our city, I mean, out of our city. Do you know of any methods or requirements or anything that you guys can do to ensure that this looks and is a well-maintained park?
Yeah, I think, you know, like anything, we want it to be as beautiful as possible, but while also still maintaining the lowest maintenance possible. And that may mean xeriscape, and a lot of our images and conceptual images show a lot of rock and show a lot of, you know, we don't want weed patches. We don't want this to look like West Wendover. You know, we want an attractive community. You know, like you said, there's a good RV park and there's a bad RV park. And we want to make sure this is a statement RV park, and this is your front door or your, I
It'll
guess.
be a statement of one kind or another. We're hoping it's the statement we want to make.
Well, I mean, they would, you know, they're going to have revenue and fees, and people are going to pay into that. That's going to help.
Who would be managing the RV park?
You know, it would be its own entity.
I assume CW Land doesn't operate, you would sell.
We would sell, or we would, you know, involve a partner who is a management company that does stuff like this every day. Well, I don't know KOA, but yes, it would be fully maintained and it would be self-sustaining with its own revenue.
Is the intent to sell it though?
But yeah, I mean, we're not in the RV park business. We think this is a good use. This is a good benefit for the community. I don't know ultimately what the exit is, if it's, hey, we hold it for a few years or we stick with it long-term. I can't answer that. I don't know.
What's the plan in developing the RV park in conjunction? Would it be after the residential homes are done, before, in conjunction with, what would be the timeline?
All the above. I mean, it's probably like a standard subdivision where you phase it in phases and you do maybe a phase 1 and a phase 2. If there's enough demand and there's enough, you know, excitement about it, maybe we do the whole thing at once, depending on the market. And a lot of those questions are market driven.
So if it's done in phases and it possibly is sold to somebody, what if it's not completed when they sell it? What happens to the rest of the land? They just wait just in case?
No, I mean, it'd probably have some type of development agreement and zoning in place, you know, standards in place. I mean, it's not like, not like it just turns into, you know.
Yeah, you guys generally just do the entitlement and then you sell it to the RV. Same with the residential, you would entitle the residential and then.
You know, it's bringing up a great point. CW Land, you've been in our city before, but you didn't actually develop. You just did the entitlement and sold it off. Is that the intent here?
Every project is different. We have different business models for different projects, and it's not always one size fits all. In some projects, we're building more and more of our own homes and being our own home builder. It's not always the case. In some cases, it's a better.
So is it for this one?
It's something we can't answer right now. I mean, I can't answer. I mean, this is probably 2 years down the road from being actually finished, completed. If we move forward at a good pace and we sold these off. So I can't answer that now, but this could be, you know, a Symphony Homes or an Ivory Homes, or, you know, it could be a different home builder that comes in and builds homes. It could be a mix of CW with our homes and other homes. I mean, it's hard to say that right.
You know, like the shoreline, they sold half to Century and half to Woodside. The Fields, they sold half to American Homes and half to Century.
Yeah, I love that.
Brody, I'd like to recognize Brody for another question.
Yeah, just another follow-up question on the RV park, and I know it's early in the process. Have you guys done a market study on like the number of RV pads that are necessary for it to maybe be successful, or any kind of market study like that yet? Or is it
Yeah, I mean,
conceptual?
aside from the preliminary revenue study that we've done, the revenue study is to show the city what the impact is to tax revenue to the city. You know, obviously we have to make our own pro forma balance and work, and we have to make sure we package an RV park that if we do sell it, it can be sold, it is profitable. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. But yeah, I mean, that's the intent, is to have something be profitable. So,
So you do it at some point, it's like a study that.
yeah, at some point,
Some sort of.
whether that's internal or,
Okay.
yeah.
If you do it internal, have you ever done an RV park before?
We actually have people who work on our team who have more experience in that. I can't speak for myself personally, no, but I know there's people on our team that have more experience in things like that.
Okay, well, are there any last questions you'd like us to address? Please don't move on. Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
our next item, review and discussion of section 10.100 of the Syracuse City Code pertaining to permitted uses within the town center overlay. Noah, would you like to start us off?
You bet. The staff report was not extensive. I think from what I understand, the intent here is to look at the permitted uses in the town center overlay zone. I included the ordinance on the screen. We have some limitations in what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Specifically mentions that car washes are not allowed. It talks about being more walkable. I'm just trying to scroll down to the section where it talks about the permitted uses here. So it's 10.100.030. It specifically prohibits auto repair, auto body, auto maintenance, auto detailing, car washes, and car dealerships. Since these uses are limited with the intent to create a pedestrian-friendly mixed-use city core, including the location, orientation, drive-through service uses. So it does not limit gas stations specifically. Right. So this is the chance to revisit this ordinance. Is the list good? Is it missing something?
Well, I think already we have an issue with, we wanted to see an event center, and that was not on here, right? Is that correct?
As a
I think
permitted
it was just,
center?
as a permitted use.
Are you thinking of the Glen Eagle one?
Uh-huh.
No, that's.
It's not within our town center.
Here, let me show you the map. So the town center is
So this is all.
an overlay.
Only for
Yeah.
town center.
So if you look at the map, the hatch area is what we define as the town center. So the golf course event center was proposed to be.
How far west is that? Does it go?
About
2,500.
Yeah,
Here's the movie theater.
Okay.
That's 25 away,
2,500 is what you just said.
and then over to Banbury.
And to be honest, I'm not sure this will still be our town center after the freeway comes. I kind of wonder.
That's why I was thinking that this was going to be considered part of it, because we talked about maybe the West Davis corridor might end up being where we put our town center. So is this only, is this what if our town center really?
You can change the boundary of the town center.
According to the way it's at right now, we define the town center. So we could redefine the town center, but we have an ordinance that applies to whatever we define it as.
There's really two different things. So like the freeway, generally speaking, the commercial uses around the freeway are much more suburban in nature, and way less walkable. And so the development pattern is different. And then village center. Yeah, if you can imagine, the gas station, the parking lot, but then if we're after like this little village kind of non-I-15 thing, that's what this ordinance is trying to reinforce, is a little bit smaller scale stuff. And so the intersection of Antelope 2000, you see in some of the buildings starting to reflect that, but the market pressures are intense to try to build the gas stations and the.
So my thoughts on this, are, so we've discussed this. I don't think I want to simply rule out any specific business, but I do want to put distance requirements on the proximities. So I don't want, I mean, we've seen instances where we had a whole bunch of the same thing within a block of each other, and they ended up hurting all of them. And so while I know that some would argue that, well, let capitalism figure that out.
No, I've heard of rumors like 3 new gas stations wanting to come.
Sure, so I guess what I would propose, and I think this helped remedy that, is we would like to put a restriction on the same specific business being within, I've heard like a half mile of the other, of another.
Okay, so think about this. If that were the case,
Hmm.
then you would be telling Maverick they couldn't open because they owned the lot across the street without closing it first.
But then it would also stop. the
And it
new
would stop them
people
from
redoing
redoing
it
it.
and having to be one.
Okay, I understand you say
That's
that,
on the.
But I think they're grandfathered in because they already,
Yeah.
okay, but you,
Just going forward.
while you have somebody grandfathered in, you are preventing competition from others.
Monopolizing it.
Because you wouldn't get the Walmart gas station that is coming because it's
already
within a
approved.
half mile. And it's already, okay, but again, the point being that how does this impact the future of the city?
We'll have 6 gas stations before the season takes effect, so I think.
I think at
I'm with
that
them.
point, I mean, they can always ask for a deviance, and if there's if they're different enough from the same thing, then they're in, they're in.
Well, great. Please make sure that's data of the record.
EVA,
I,
it's the same.
I am concerned, and here's why. I've spent an awful lot of time in the last few months with people proposing that they want to bring businesses to the city. And one of the things that they keep bringing up is we do a market study before we decide to open. So the idea that we would decide arbitrarily without the market study, for example, I mean, we've got people talking about whether another gas station in particular would fit here. But if they've got a market study that says we're underserved, and we also have a study that says we've got leakage in that area, how are we to say you can't put another one in here? It might be just fine.
Yeah, but when. Can we wait for all of them to be finished being built before the study is done? Because people. Can we talk, timing is, like, it's, when you do a study and then 2 years later, it's, okay, well, we would have built this, well, you just got all that information back, but it's now 2 years old. You see what I'm getting at?
If I'm trying to say, let's not phase out our business. I'm worried that we put regulations in place that tell businesses they can't come.
Yeah, I mean, if you put a regulation that you couldn't have a similar business, I'm just using your example, within a half mile or whatever. I mean, what's a similar business? You could have a Pizza Hut and a Domino's within a half mile and they both do just fine.
Or would they be considered restaurants from all one do within a block? I think there are 2 issues. I think one is that you can end up widening an area, which is what you were just talking about. It affected all of the surrounding businesses because there's so much competition for the same service. So I understand that is a real issue. But I also think there's a lot of merit to be said about a market study is required, and every bank requires them before they'll loan you anything, and they are really strict in their expectations, and you do have to show how many rooftops you have, how many potential customers, and if there are viable businesses around there that are doing the same thing, or if you're taking over the market, or, I mean, there are just all kinds of things involved in that, and so I tend to think that they already kind of restrict some things, whether or not they'll loan the money based on your market.
So we're talking gas stations that are like backed by Maverick that are not gonna necessarily have the challenges that.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I don't think, no, there's.
So let me ask this, so can we still put that in, that we want to validate that their market study takes into account of all the proposals that maybe they don't know about, that are already approved?
Well, but it can't take it to the, what, did you hear what you just said?
I absolutely did.
Okay, so you can't take something into account that you don't know is there.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
So
But
that's what I'm saying is,
How are they supposed to present this proposal if they don't know of the other things that may be taken into account?
that's why I said we would like to know if they know about that.
That's
So
what
for
I'm
me,
saying.
I think we're still looking at a half block area that we want to make. Our idea, at least at one point, was to make it walkable, to make it friendly, inviting, and not traffic oriented, not highway commercial strip. It's one small section. So I'm thinking I still have no problem prohibiting additional gas stations. I really don't. Just because it's saturated in that area. And if they're not in that area, we already know that multiple gas stations are interested in coming in all throughout the city. And so I don't think you're gonna lose leakage. I don't think people are gonna be concerned about that. And if we are, we're cutting out 1/2 acre or 1/2 mile section that we do want to have pedestrian friendly. And that's
But
a
it's
decision
not-
we decide or not.
So are you talking about just having it be gas stations that we prohibit or that they can?
We've already prohibited car washes, right? So
So that's really the question. Like, are we saying a general across the board, you can't have, no matter what your business is, or are we going to specify gas stations?
Well, I
car
mean, like,
washes?
well, car wash is already in there, right? We can't have any
It
more.
just
car washes.
says, yeah, no more, but there's a few different things that I've seen done. I mean, sometimes it's a distance requirement, sometimes it's a maximum number within the area, so no more than whatever. And it is public information, all these people have applied, so, just so you guys know, we have Come and Go by the movie theater that was applied for a site plan application by Walmart, and then we have Walmart that has site plan approval, and, it's working on a building
And
permit,
then 2 minutes.
and then 2 minutes. So we have
So
4
right in
Four
the
and a half
same,
within
in the city.
quarter
center.
mile or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there'll be more, you're not auctioning more off.
And again,
That's
I'm just
you
saying,
know,
I feel like asking someone to go, maybe it's not a 1/2 mile, maybe it's a 1/4 mile
But are you
by the
wanting,
next one.
but are you wanting just gas stations? You're saying any?
That's what I'm saying.
I just wonder how you build
Are we just saying you can
To your
only
point, how do you?
I knew that would be the situation.
because, you know,
Because if we feel like we've already got enough gas stations in city center, then
And my consideration is, again, the transit oriented issue or the traffic oriented issue, like, are we considering this a walkable area, which we know it's not right now, but you can only get further from that at this point, whether you make these decisions now or not. We'll kick the can further and further, and they'll ask for exceptions on the setbacks, they'll ask for different layouts of buildings like we've seen with other folks that don't really care about our decision, and if we don't care about it, that's fine, but I thought we were committed to like not having it necessarily be.
We just did it for Rabbit. We just made it.
I was
We made
opposed to it,
exceptions.
yeah. But-
okay, so right now, we currently don't show them as a commercial use allowed. Is that right?
We don't have any prohibition on it.
there's
right now.
no limit on gas stations.
Oh, okay, so, but they're listed as a possibility to use commercial space.
Yeah, they
So
just build
we
it.
could
They're just not-
say-
They're not listed, right? It's just
So we
not-
could
not
remove
listed.
them now.
So, if you look at the permitted uses within the ordinance, it's an overlay zone, so it takes it a step further. So whatever the underlying zoning is, are the permitted uses, and then this just enhances or detracts from it. So if you look on the list here.
See, my thing is,
Permitted use.
Basically, if we put it in there, it's where we take gas stations out of it, so they. Basically, if they wanted to apply for one, they could just come back and be like, we'd like to change this, like we were talking about earlier. They could just like,
Yeah, I mean, if we ever really thought,
Apply,
we
yeah.
need 2 more gas stations, we can always change the ordinance.
Yeah, but if this is over a general
Reads like-
commercial zone, a general commercial zone lists gas station as permitted use, then. And then this, it sits on top of it and says you can't do it, then the overlay zone,
Trumps
is more restrictive, yeah.
I
So-
just wasn't sure what you were getting at, if you want to prohibit gas station uses?
That's my
altogether?
recommendation, would be
Okay.
to say, within the town center overlay,
Oh,
prohibit future, yeah, like not a moratorium on gas stations in general, state or citywide.
But once again, what if we bump this overlay zone and we connect it to West Davis corridor? Then we just added a big portion.
Well, and I think with that, you might, I think that would come down to our ability to craft a zone that, like, we wouldn't call it the city center overlay, or we would call it city center 2 or new city center overlay or something
So
like
just the
that.
way it stands now. we
I
call
would
it-
say that location, the city center overlay is what is that what the actual term?
well, I actually think I would like to expand this down to 3,000.
I'm with you on that.
And prohibit gas stations for
I don't
3,000?
think we
That's
can.
hard.
No, that's why I'm saying, and then put in the distance requirement. on specific,
Yeah.
maybe put the district requirements on specific services.
I support that.
I do too. I think that we should bump our overlay zone to connect to West Explorer. We
Let's-
talked about
Near
that
that-
being.
No new
a
gas
new kind
stations
of
in that
center.
area.
Let's play this out for a minute. Let's say that, okay, hear me out for a second, because I've talked to a lot of proposals lately. So let's say that you do this all the way to 3,000. That means that all the way to 3,000, you can't have an identical business within half mile. But you have a large developer come in and say, I want to develop a property with outlying property, similar to a Smith's Marketplace. But on the opposite corner, somebody comes in and puts a gas station, but you now can't allow a gas station within a half mile, so that means he can't put it within his development. Are you willing to risk losing a bigger development because a smaller development already trumped it? This
You
is
got
a
that multiple
situation,
properties there.
this is a situation that's potential, okay?
Okay,
Not
but
about-
that in potential, where would it potentially fit?
There aren't any properties the way it currently is. I think
Yeah,
it's-
that-
There's the Cook property and then we own acres. on
So you're saying that on that whole undeveloped area that we do have on our current
Well, the Cook
commercial,
property, but not.
well, the Cook property
Mhm.
and our property and the golf
There's
course.
a space somewhere in there that's the same size as that Smith Marketplace area.
Yep,
There's a
Mhm.
17-acre portion at one point, right?
well, there's a couple of
That's a
properties.
30-acre area though, isn't it, where that Smiths and West Point is?
You guys are talking about extending it. to
All I'm
3,000
saying is
foot
if you extend it to there, you affect our property. What about if, I mean, there's a potential that the school could move and then that property becomes commercial. And
so
do you take away these things and say, because on one corner of the gas station, you're now property owner of 30 acres, can't put one in there, 30 acres?
I'm still in favor of treating them as two separate city center products, zones, potentially, still trying to focus on the pedestrian oriented focus of our actual current city center and then treating that one as we go, because there's gonna need to be gas stations, whether you've got an interchange, the demand is gonna be extremely high.
Yep.
Agree.
I think,
So when.
and then past 3,000, you know, what do you do if it's?
Yeah.
Get down the rest of the.
The lake
What's that?
extended.
No, what do you think?
So I'm saying that there will be going further west,
I mean, there's one right
the
by
more
it, so.
especially, we've been talking
It's
so
about
much about
far in and
access
far
to
in.
the Great Salt Lake.
Maverick.
And people would be getting right off that freeway exit and go straight to the lake. And they won't hit any of those.
And they'll need to pick up a
gates
diet
there.
mountain too.
They will.
Yes, they will. Yeah. Okay, so what are you suggesting next month? Doing a different.
Well, I'm
spot
just treating
altogether?
these as two separate conversations, because I don't know
Okay.
that, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as 3,000, but at this point, for
I
me
agree with
personally,
that.
because I think those are valid points, but also I think our conceptual idea that that is gonna be the new city center has a lot of pieces that need to come into play and businesses that need to fall in line and properties that need to be rezoned and all these things we're talking about are very hypothetical in nature at this point.
Well, I
We
think there's
it
a
will
lot of
come.
things that are about to change within the next year, and I guess I'm just suggesting that if you go changing things that affect business development, you better be conscious of what it does. Right now, the suggestion is that you would add another restricted use to the current overlay zone. But we can talk about doing something other than that, but if you were to do that today, I don't think the situation that I just talked about a whole large development applies, because there isn't a large development. But you do say that none of those properties could be used by a gas station.
And I'm just stating that I'm okay with that as far as like what's currently in the works, because everything would be, I mean, if somebody's already applied for or made application, that wouldn't be affected by that because they're beholden to the existing zoning at the time, right?
But if everything changes within a year because of the way that things move, because of the
Which
new
they will.
freeway and everything else that happens, or 2 years, we may have other properties there that we'd be desperate for anybody to take, and we could have chased off the property that would have kept that and other businesses alive.
Well, I'm wondering then if that means we need to have that future discussion a little bit earlier than later in regards to how we look at that overlay for that new.
Maybe it's
town
worth
center region,
talking
the
about.
3,000 west.
Mhm.
I'm very concerned that we're being too restrictive for business development.
For one prohibited use within the town center that already has.
We should have any real prohibited uses.
We should take the car wash exemption off there and.
I think that it was I think that we had an application on one property that didn't fit on one property. And we crafted an ordinance to try and prevent that from happening
Like
again.
that's hearsay.
Uh,
Because like you're telling us about, it was crafted and that.
It was, I was here with
So what property was it? And what,
the property
How did
that
it
it's on today
okay,
was a proposed car wash. And because they didn't want a car wash there, they added to the overlay zone that no other car washes can go in the overlay zone. I think that was the wrong way to
so
go
then
about it.
we add the
That was a bad
gas
fit for that.
station. You know, I would like a better car wash and self-serve. So if we do the gas station, the same thing, then
Then another property that might be a good fit for a gas station could be excluded because we just used the wrong tool to try and do this.
Well, but just think about this as far as like how far east we go, it's just Banbury, which has 2 gas stations between Banbury and 2000 West. And then it goes, yeah, and then from north to south, it goes to this,
It doesn't go very far.
yeah, very
City Hall or.
It mostly goes up.
which
along
again,
the
we've got, you know, the Maverick on both corners there, east and west there, so I can't imagine it go anywhere north or south. And then we've got 3 proposed between. 2000 West. Well, you've got 3 or
Yeah, come and go, the Walmart.
And this is between
Well,
2 and 3.
and then Mavericks, right?
I'm pretty sure your house is in that overlay zone.
I know. We can rezone.
You can right now.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Typical.
Do it before we
we did like, what if it-
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm a little hesitant to,
I'm okay. I mean, if there's, it doesn't sound like there's much concurrence on this, so I'm okay
So,
just
I
leaving
mean,
it as is.
let's think about this. The purpose of what happened before, of even creating this. I understand, and I voted that a car wash did not fit on the space that the Maverick was on. I think that was wrong. And I'm glad that it didn't happen. But the way that it's written here, there are properties down by 2,500 that could not have a car wash. And are you saying that there's no need for a car wash that far away? Down by the movie theater? Honestly, I mean, that's what
Yeah,
this, the
personally, I'm-
consequence
yeah.
of this is. And I don't know that that's really accurate. I think that a car wash could have gone in down there. And then now with some of these properties that have been vacated by UDOT, because they took them over, some of those are smaller. If somebody put up a self-serve car wash, I don't think that that would be wrong.
You only said that because I would use it like every day.
I'm very reticent to regulate anything that we shouldn't be regulating. I think that there's a tremendous amount of, we know that we feel really responsible for the value that we bring here to the city and the businesses we bring in. But I also think that there is a line that we shouldn't be crossing, and that is to impede someone else's
I mean, we
capitalism.
literally just said in our first discussion of the day that we would not rezone something prematurely commercial because we wanted to tell people what they could or couldn't put into their properties. So.
Here we are.
Well, then,
I mean.
but that tool allows us to look at an individual parcel and an individual
There's a
business
plot that's
rather than
1
targeted.
acre. Yes.
And I'm talking about an overlay zone, to be able to do the exact same thing. That's what they-
Well, no, it's not.
So this is
It's
pretty.
enormous. Talking about, I mean, everybody still has to approach us if they can do it.
Because they couldn't even approach us in an overlay zone.
In an overlay zone
They couldn't
prevents them to
approach us.
even approach us. It's just out. Yeah.
It specifically says that you can't.
Yeah.
So they would call.
All right, so we've kind of gone around in a few circles, but I guess the point is that I would encourage council to say that this is not something that we should revise at this time. But it's up to you. If you want to make a more restrictive ordinance out of this, you're the council, you're the votes. What do you want to do? You want to hear this on a future meeting?
I probably wouldn't want to make it more restrictive.
Okay, there's one,
I agree.
there's two.
Well, I would do a gas station in Harvey, so whatever he's doing.
There's one on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I still like the distance for specific types.
You're the swing vote, Jen.
Solely for the fact that I would really like the self-serve car wash, with them.
Okay, so we're gonna put this to bed.
Being my car.
We're gonna put this to bed, and we are not gonna address it at this time, maybe at another time.
It's thing doesn't know how water.
Okay, next is discuss the proposed amendments to the Syracuse City consolidated fee schedule for fiscal year. Steve.
All right, I'll try to keep this under an hour. All right, three simple changes. We just had one a month ago, I realize that. But with going online with our building permits, that is gonna be a big cost to us, and so we want to make sure we recoup the cost of our credit card transactions. We're proposing changing that from 1% to 3%. The second one we just talked about earlier in the meeting, that would be the increase on the rates for garbage. And that would be a May 1st effective date. The last one is the sewer district has just approved their IFA and IFFP for their sewer impact fees. It is a 90-day wait period because their fees are going up. And I did talk to the sewer district, and they actually are thinking July 1st, maybe the effective date. So that third one we could probably wait on a little bit. Or we can approve it and have it be effective July 1st. Those are the three changes that we're proposing.
I would propose that we just approve it now and let it be the effective date when it happens.
And on the car processing fee, why are we going from 1 to 3?
We're not recouping the costs. Traditionally, credit card processing is around 3%.
Yeah.
So it's a pass through.
Yeah.
You've ever seen it one.
So what's the difference in the sewer district? Didn't we just do something?
This is not your personal taxes, it's impact fees, and we have not done it
Okay,
in 15
impact
years.
fees for.
So this is new bill.
Okay.
This is
thank
only
you.
on new build. This is not a fee that any of us would pay.
Currently, our single family is 32.56, so it's going up
200.
slightly.
Yeah. And it is a study that we hadn't done in 15 years, and they had studied what the projected costs of the new.
It only went up $200.
In 15 years, that's not bad.
Yeah, actually. And it's, impact, so it's new construction.
Based on what.
That's really not bad.
Really, right.
That's it.
Okay, so we okay to put this on, it can't go on consent because it's muddy, but we'll put it on future agenda. All right, so let's move to the really exciting part, our biennial reviews for administrative services, city recorder, legal and justice. Who gets to go first?
Lead off.
Take 5 minutes.
Let's take 5 minutes and be back here. And I'll lead off with Cassie, since she had to come all the way back.
I would love
For all of us.
Great, that's all.
Hi, sorry.
You're gonna bring us back. And we will begin with records. Cassie, you're up.
Hey, Miss Kathy. Brody
So,
just has a little.
yeah, let me just intro what we're doing here. So we've got our combined administration first, right? So there's actually multiple department heads that we're doing a review on. Sports and records, legal, administrative services, and CED tonight. As we, let me go to the next slide. So, everything we do and where we've kind of structured these reviews is looking at both the mission statement of the city, which is what we try to accomplish here, right? And then also the vision that the council has adopted, the vision statements that the council adopted a few years ago, and it's probably time maybe next year to review those. But so just a quick introduction on kind of why we do this. We just take a break, take a deep look into each department, see what their challenges are, see what has been going on in the last couple of years, and see if we're meeting that mission of the city.
I would interject, we still have time to review those, and I do think that we should. But we did review that, even when having the council to say that you still agreed with the recommendation. Because if the council ever disagreed, we should, at our annual retreat, update this if you felt like the city is no longer wanting to go after that certain vision. But I mean, we have kind of doing that. All right.
Hey. So, yeah, Brody touched on the mission and vision statements for city administration, and the two that really directly apply to the office of the city recorder relate to customer service. So employees are knowledgeable, courteous, and customer oriented, and then also transparency. So really the main two functions of my area of the city are to provide quality customer service. We obviously do that through the passport program. That's just a solely customer service program. And also justice court is really a good service for our citizens. And then as far as transparency goes, Brody and I just visited about this a little bit today even. Really most of the city's records and the messaging that goes out to the residents probably flows through my office, just through, agenda publication, city council packet publication, minutes, and obviously like the recordings of our meetings. And so transparency has always been a high priority in my area of the city. Bree has got a little bit more on the justice court vision statements in her presentation, so I won't focus on those, but obviously it's important for the justice court to be administered fairly and efficiently. The office of the city recorder, just a reminder, encompasses the justice court and the passport acceptance facility. I just provided a breakdown of kind of the main functions of both the city recorder and the justice court. And then obviously passports is pretty self-explanatory. It's a single function division of my department. So I wanted to just go into a little bit of the court case history in the justice court, just to give you an idea of just some changes in our caseload. So the blue line on this graph is from 2019. So I have a section for traffic cases, criminal cases, and then the total cases. We do also handle small claims in the justice court, but those numbers were so small, like less than 10 per year. So I didn't include those. But you can see that in 2019, our caseload was fairly significant, and everything dipped in 2020 during COVID. And during that time, really and into 2021, just responsive to the change in workload and associated revenue, we adjusted our staffing in the justice court. And so we were reduced by a part-time position in the justice court. But now you can see the purple line in 2022, we're back up and really we're above what we were in 2019 when we had that extra staff position. So I am.
Everyone's out breaking the law.
Yeah.
Go. Make them up, kid.
Yeah, it's good or bad, I guess, depending on how you look at it.
Just trying to get the baby.
I was corrected, you guys.
I knew that was.
Okay, so because of that change and because the cases have come back up, I am requesting, and it will be in the budget if you guys approve it, or at least for more discussion in the upcoming budget retreat, that I would like an additional part-time court clerk position, just so that we really can handle the increase in caseload again, and the approximate cost of that position is $25,000. And during the retreat, I'll provide more information on our revenue from the justice court, so you can see, what we're covering, but this is just kind of an introduction to that request. And then for passports, this graph down here at the bottom again is just a tracker dating back to 2019 for the number of passports that we processed. You can see, just like justice court, we had a dip in 20 and 21. We came back up again in 22 and exceeded what we were doing pre-pandemic. And then for fiscal year 23, we're on track to exceed that also. We did just hire a part-time passport agent. So now we have Marisa, who is the full-time passport agent and deputy recorder, and she manages the passport program for the city. And then she oversees 2 part-time positions that we have in passports.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, right.
So it's February and we're already,
Way up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we're really getting into the busy season.
Well, that's good.
so if we were to extrapolate, so that's true, there's only 3 or 4 months left on
Yeah.
this.
This is, this is through, but I think this was just.
Thank you for pointing that out.
So it's actually through January, so there will be 5 more months. Yeah, we're tracking to exceed what we did in 22. And yeah, the part-time, Brody just did point out the part-time position that we just hired in passports was a replacement of a position that we used to split between my department and the legal department of the city. And just so you know, net revenue for the program this year is right around 20,000. So that covers all of our staff expenses and then operational costs. And so an extra 20,000 to the general fund. Next year, it'll probably be a little bit higher than that just because the replacement staffing costs were lower than what we were paying in previous year. So should be higher. And we just continue to grow every year too. So just relating to the passport acceptance facility, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some proposed changes that I have to the wage scale. And we can again talk about this more in the retreat. This was just meant to be introductory in nature, but I do want to responsive to the changes that we made in the recruitment and compensation policy for the city. We identified opportunities for creating succession plans for departments, and my department is one of those that really doesn't have any like a real career path, or at least for the recorder and passport functions. We do have some steps within the justice court. So we have like a court clerk 1 and 2 part-time and full-time, and then we have a court clerk supervisor. But we don't have any supervisory positions in the passport and deputy recorder lanes. And Marisa really is performing those jobs already, right? Like we hired her as a deputy recorder and a passport agent, but she's managing the program and she handles our recertification every year. She's responsible for how successful the program is really. And so I want to make sure that our wage scale and the wages that we're offering like reflect the work that we're getting out of people in that department. And so if we can talk about this more in the upcoming retreat, I just have created a couple different wage scales that would allow for like a passport agent 1, passport 2, deputy recorder 1 and 2, and then a chief deputy recorder and passport supervisor. So any questions on that?
The city's getting it outside, no? They're getting up there, because the other cities have quite a few.
also planning for growth.
Yeah.
That we don't have, when we get to it, as we grow that way, we don't
We
have
don't
any way to grow into it.
Catch up to it.
So just my closing slide is just the breakdown of how my department functions right now. So you can see the existing court clerk supervisor position and then our full-time court clerk and then the requested part-time court clerk. And then Marisa over here on the deputy recorder passport side and then the two part-time passport agents. So that's all. Unless there's any questions.
Questions, council? Okay, we will move on to the next, who's up next? Bree?
I am, so I just have a list of what the legal department and the services departments. I don't have any chart because it looks like sad. My 3 boxes, but really it's just me, Kristen Trimming is from the legal admin assistant and Celeste Hopkins is our victim advocate. And so to meet the administrative vision statement 1, we're really just looking at going to training. I think that's the best way for us to become knowledgeable about current ordinances and for Celeste it's becoming more knowledgeable and getting more training on things like trauma-informed responses and going to my training constantly updating the law. You all have questions, so I know get some more training. The Justice Court vision, I do believe we're meeting the Justice Court needs. The Victim Services Program provides a lot of notification to victims. We are mostly virtual appearance, so there's very few in-court appearances, and I think that helps create the ability for people to appear for their citation, whether they're the victims of crime or the actual defendant. People no longer have to take time off to appear for court, which is a good thing. We don't want people losing their jobs over these citations. The other thing is that a lot of our cases are suspended licenses or driver's license issues. And so we don't want people driving on these suspended licenses, getting tickets. So to appear from home is a really good thing. And also people don't have to get childcare in those instances. So I think that's providing a really great service for people. And it's opening justice up to people as well, because while it's not my preference that they choose to exercise their trial rights, I think people really think more about having a trial because they can do it in their gym if they want from home, and that's more comfortable. And we don't want to be, I don't know, court's a scary place for some people. Certainly, most of our cases are traffic, and so they're not hardened criminals coming into our court. So we want to be friendly, and we want to, we don't want it to be a scary place for them their first time. So I think we're doing that, and we don't have any intention to stray from the virtual appearance for now. We do still give people the option to appear in person, but it's working really well, and we're getting through our cases much more quickly that way. We don't have a backlog of cases, and that's part of justice as well. For the Justice Court Vision 2 statements, there was a really big focus on reaching fair resolutions before I got there. I don't believe I've strayed from that, but one of the things that I focus on is restitution for victims of crime. It's really hard to make sure that victims of criminal mischief or theft or something like that, they get their restitution. I think that's a big part of justice. We're still doing youth court referrals. There is a new program that was rolled out through the states that became effective in October, and it's a deferred traffic diversion program. And unfortunately, for our court, they have to administer it, but they don't get to recoup the costs. The state does. Most of the fees go to the state for this deferred traffic program. So while our court oversees it, It's not like a free and maintenance program where we see someone with you. This is mostly just kept off anytime you packet record if you're eligible. And so it's a good cost for the court, but we're not doing any kind of recruitment and fee. And so that will also change numbers that I'm sure have to go show. The other big thing is they rolled out an expungement program where they're expunging cases at a really rapid rate. And that's hard for the courts to keep up with, and it's hard for police records to keep up with because it's a large amount of cases. So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping up with those types of things, but the state keeps adding on top of us without actually giving us time or resources to implement some of these programs. So that's something we're having to deal with. And the change that Kathy mentioned, we went from when I first got here, we had a split between the legal assistant and passport program, and when that position opened up, I made the request to separate those two, and that was more probably of a selfish reason. I was looking to attract applicants that had some legal experience, because I believe Paul was using that position differently than I have since we hired someone. And going forward, I've been giving Kristen a lot more responsibilities than the last person had as far as legal administration goes. Kristen handling all of the invoicing and billing in my department, and I believe she shares some of Brody's responsibilities. And also she is keeping all of the statistical data that we are required. That's a new requirement from the state too. We have a lot of data to report for our prosecution program. And she also is involved in a little more of the contract side of things, whereas the former position represents. And as time goes on and she gets a little more comfortable with the legal path, we'll have her do more of the civil side of things. So, that's good too.
Yeah, I think so.
So the Victim Services Program began in October 2017. Originally, it was a 80-20% split with the federal government. They've cut that in 2021, I believe. So it's looking more like a 60-40% split, but we do split the 40% with Clinton and Sunset. It's about a 15 or 16 million program for us. I don't know what the federal government will do this year as far as cuts go. I'm hoping that they'll just keep it the status quo is what we've got here. But if they do decide to cut some more, I might have to come back to you all and how much more you'd be willing to cover cost wise. Or I know the city attorney of Farmington, and maybe you want to have services through Farmington as well. I'm not sure. I would have to see where we could find the funding. But we are going to be applying for the grants for the 24-25 year coming up in April. And one of the things that we will have to, when we apply for that, is incorporate language that the city's not willing to cover the costs more than a certain time frame. So that can be good and bad, right? Like for you all, I'm saying you won't have to cover this more than 2 years. Because if we didn't say something like that, then the Fed could give us the money for the grant program. So I'm telling you, we're going to use language right now that says we can't cover those costs more than the upcoming year, but I'm hoping if we don't get the funding, you are willing to cover those costs.
They won't let us supplant, huh?
So, But Celeste also has to present to the council twice a year, so she is hopefully gonna be presenting to you all in April.
Now, in the past, when you say twice a year, in the past, we divided that between the cities, so that she only comes here once a year, but she comes to Clinton and Sunset once a year too, so that counted, is that the case?
Yeah, she's,
Not that I don't want to hear from her a lot, but it is kind of the same type of report.
yeah,
She has more important things to do than.
Yeah,
you're right.
it's a lot of
Important-
numbers
it's important,
producing for
but
her to, yeah.
she is on their calendar in Clinton and Sunset.
Yeah, I'm good with once a year.
Yeah,
I do love to hear her reports because they're awesome, but I just don't want to overburden her with having to make a presentation for us constantly.
Yeah,
the more time she's working on a presentation, the less she's helping people.
Yeah.
That's what I don't want to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and if our grant doesn't require us, then I'm not going to be listening to. That's why. But I also will be meeting with Clinton and Sunset. I'm actually here shortly to discuss the cost split, because every year we look at the case numbers for those cities and we allocate the percentages that it's put in. So the numbers are not quite yet. And so I just included some prosecution, well, the cases from the court database, and like Kathy said, the numbers have gone up mostly for traffic, for criminal calendar, the misdemeanors, have pretty much.
2019 was a rough year. Oh, never mind, that's traffic. Got it. I'm reading it wrong.
And one thing to point out is just within the last year, the state changed some of the misdemeanor classes for instance, we don't have a large amount of DUIs. So any second intent is now a class A, and the county prosecutes those. So that took away a good amount of numbers, but with the highway coming in, those will find increase. And the change, well, it happened a while ago, the change for domestic violence cases, anyone is the second intent or a second implied for some of these domestic violence cases about 80 and above. So they took a lot of the cases out of the misdemeanor. So that's
So
why
our court doesn't handle any felony cases.
it does not. And there is a group that is tasked with reviewing our court systems, and right now it's comprised of attorneys and judges and administrators, and they're kind of reviewing our court systems all together, and some of the proposals that they have are pretty drastic changes, so I'm not sure if they'll go through, but
Like the hog, all the excitement that it can.
yeah, I don't.
they're welcome to take it.
Good with that.
Who's gonna have it? Sure.
So. Any questions?
How do you like being here?
I quite like it. Everyone's very, very nice. And I just have to briefly, and you all know, so let's take a pause. So.
I know that time you caught Noah off guard, we all caught wind from that one. We're like, nope, we're not gonna, now we just wait for the look.
It's been really wonderful.
Next, Steve, you're up.
I assume all of you have looked through these slides, so I'm not gonna hit every point. Pick out a few here and there. Administration, you can see us as the hub. My department provides both internal service and external, so utilities and post office. Obviously, the customers are the citizens. Everyone else is more of a support for all the other departments.
I do see you chose a racing wheel, so
Yeah,
there's expectations there.
all right.
I didn't even realize what the bike road is. So did I.
Of the citywide visions, Here are 6, 2 for administration, 4 for IT. I think one of the high points is where employees are knowledgeable, courteous, and customer oriented. We're trying to be transparent with the citizen. With IT, we're constantly trying to improve our processes. We've actually changed quite a bit of systems that we're using. We've done the C-click fix. We just started implementing civic review for our building permits and business licensing. So we're constantly trying to find ways to improve efficiencies and also be more effective. So this is a list of things we do in each of our divisions. I'm not going to go through them in detail. If you have questions for me, let me know. There is a few typos. The 8,900 utility counts is now 9,800. So in 2 years, we've almost added 1,000 accounts with new single families. And then on the next one, you can see with HR and post office, some of the services. There's 2 on each page. I'm not sure what it's going to be.
You can get page down.
Some of the things that we handle day to day. This is not all inclusive, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what we're doing in each of our divisions. Any questions on that one?
Gilbert is on there.
Hopefully you read that one. No, you didn't. And then IT and risk management, again, there's some of the things we're handling. IT, as we become more and more efficient and modernize and become green as far as IT services, it just becomes all more encompassing, a lot more support that's needed in the city. I like tables. I'm a finance person. This kind of gives you a snapshot of different like a 7-year trend for each of our divisions. So utility, you can see in 7 years, we've gone from 7,700 accounts to 9,800 accounts. Pretty big jump there. New home signups has been pretty consistent year to year. We're hitting that 300 plus every year. We may see a little bit of a slowdown, which we've noticed the last quarter of 2022, but you're talking with Noah, it looks like it's ramping back up again. I think everyone kind of took a deep breath, saw the interest rates and thought, I'm going to wait. But I think the demand is out there that I think we're going to start seeing that ramp up again.
I have a question for you.
Back to confetti cannons, that 10,000 household.
How did we only add, looks like we add new home signups were around only 50 new.
Yeah, this is a combination, I believe, of both existing, like, well, it might be on the next slide.
And then total utility counts, like you pointed out, was, it looks like this was around 500. So what's the delta between, where are these new utility accounts coming from if they're not from new homes?
Most of them are, and there is
no apartments yet.
This might be a delay also between building from building permit to completion as well. So when you see,
okay, I was just curious where all these accounts were coming from. So okay,
all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, several.
This is a lot of shoreline.
Each year it's 350, 400 new, not just 50.
Yeah, on the next slide, you can actually see.
Between the bar. Not the difference.
oh,
No, that's just total
got it.
here.
Now that makes sense. Thank you.
On the next slide, if you'll scroll down, this shows a breakout between existing new signups and new home signups. So we're actually getting 700, 800, 900 new applications for homes here from sellers. Existing homes or new homes, as well as if you can see the terminations there. Next one, water shutoffs. If you remember 3-4 years ago, we changed our methodology on how to shut off and noticing. And you can see that drop quite drastically in 2019. I think that's been a great program and allow more people the right notifications so they have every opportunity to shut off. And then on the left side, late fees surprisingly, people are willing to pay, and that's how I take this. You know, a $20, $15 late fee, whatever it is, I think it's 20. It was 10, I said, 6, 8 years ago, we increased it to 20, and this really didn't change the number of late fees.
That's the number, that's the value of the late fees, or we've had 97,000 late fees.
20, yeah. So monthly, we're about 700. So just under 10%, we're about 70% of our accounts are related to it.
We're gonna have no late.
Yeah, I would too.
That would be my preference.
Oh, what a way to live life where you can make money to just pay all your bills on time. I guess everybody in the city was like that, right?
Next slide, this one's a pretty good one, HR payroll. This shows our number of employee counts from year to year. We've gone from under 200 in 2016 to 261 this year. And, you know, with this next budget proposal, thanks to Aaron over there behind me, we might be adding 12 to 15 new positions, and most of those are going to fire. No, not throwing you under the bus.
But he is steering.
When you add another 15, we've increased about 70 to 80 employees. The next one, you saw the total hires and terminations. This one is an important one, information technology. This is a snapshot of what we're seeing. And I want to focus on the 1040 for a minute. That's about 4 new work orders a day. That's if employees actually submit a work order. We try to encourage, and most of them do now, but a lot of times, you know, here we're walking down the hall, hey, I have a question for you. It's a verbal, hey, I can bring and fix that. What I'm trying to say is that number, I believe, is low. I don't know what percent low, but that number continues to rise every year. We do add on new workstations, devices, new programs. And so this is continuing to grow and become a bigger and bigger burden to my department in terms of trying to keep up our service level. Which is why on the next slide, I'm asking for a new position full-time.
So if we were to get a new full-time person,
Yes.
would we be able to reduce our outsourced payment any to help compensate for this?
And actually, that was going to be one of my proposals. Right now, we're about 25 hours a week with our outsource. I would recommend reducing at least 5 hours. It would save $25,000. Help pay for a fourth of this position. This position would be about $100,000 benefits and wages. So the net increase would be around $75,000. I'm proposing a manager level. My workload is getting to a point where I need a manager in the IT realm to help support a technician and also manage the contract. I used to probably be about 30% of my time spent on IT. I would say it's at least half now. It's progressively becoming more and more. I am not the IT expert. I know enough to be dangerous, but some of the other things we got to think about too is if Taylor's sick or on vacation, all of a sudden my coverage went from 100% to I'm stuck with executive tech trying to cover 15, 20-hour weeks. I would like some redundancy there. Another thing with 2 new buildings coming on in the next 2 years with a park maintenance facility and a fire station, you just increased from 5 to 7 buildings, physical buildings. You're spreading your resources out even more. I felt like with IT, we're becoming more reactive rather than proactive. I'd like to have a second person to be able to be more proactive, have someone out on site periodically through the week, just to walk around and help people. I think there tends to be a lot of little nuances that people don't worry about unless you're there in the face and saying, oh, I have this issue. Can you fix it? And there's some other projects we've been working on. Tighten our city internet. We started that during the first phase of COVID, and I haven't made much progress with it. It just comes down to time and demand, and I think that'd be a great asset and resource to all of our employees. We have made
portions of departments onto that. But I would like to get that completed. I think that hit all the points on there. Any questions on that slide? This would be the proposed restructure. It would actually make it so I have less direct reports, which would be nice for me. You know, the rule of 3-5-7 as far as managing right now, I feel like I have a little bit too much of a flat structure. This would absolutely help me in being able to manage different divisions, having that hierarchy where we have a third mid-level management. So I have my utility building supervisor and I have my HR manager. This would add a third mid-level management. Okay, last two are just some bullet points. I'm not going to go through them in much detail. We kind of covered them. I do have some lists of just some accomplishments we've made with IT, which has been a lot. We've made a lot of progress, but I feel like we still have a lot to do. And I know with changes, it becomes hard. We've actually been updating Utopia to Public Works. And I'm glad that Robert hasn't shot me yet because we've had some issues there and some stalls. I mean, it's been probably a week of hard times trying to get that implemented. And that had to do with our executive tech guy was on vacation when we did it and no one else knew how to do it. So another reason why I could have redundancy and knowledge as well. But we do want to roll out Utopia to all of our parks, to get cameras there, to get access control to all the restrooms. Again, the park maintenance facility, the second fire station, all additional items we're gonna have to manage with IT.
I have a question on that one.
Yes,
Are we gonna replace the air fiber with actual fiber once?
that's what we
Utopia is
do. Yep, that's what was happening.
That's what was happening.
With parks, or with Public Works. We were experiencing a lot more outage with that too. I don't know if it was winter, if we had interference, we were checking it constantly, and we got to a point where Robert would pick up a phone and you'd hear about every third word he was saying. So we were trying to push that as fast as we could.
The other words were just adjectives. Or not.
So that fingers crossed is hopefully not fixed and has provided an increased service with him. Free fiber, we were like 6 megs, so the air fiber wasn't actually increased the service. But I think having 10 gig now for their department is gonna be great.
That's a little bit more than 6 minutes.
Yeah, a little bit more. So then Windows 11's eventually coming, we kind of pushed that back just because I don't know if we're ready yet for it. I'm not sure all the bugs are out of it before we do it. But that will be a citywide project. That's good. That never happens. Any questions for me? One thing I did want to bring up with all of this, and I think Brody might put on a little bit later in his presentation, is with the addition or proposal of addition of, one in Cassie's, one in mine. I think Noah wants to retain one in his. We split the legal position in two. We are running out of space in this building. I think we've kind of been on this before. As far as efficiencies goes too, I have an HR person on one side of the building and the other two on the opposite side of the building. Not very efficient. It's not that we can't do it. What my request is, if we're going to bring in 4 additional people, where do we put them? How do we do that? Our proposal is to take back the other side of the building, put everyone in a department set up where I'm not having to walk the whole building because I have people over there and here and over there. I think that's kind of the same way with a few other departments. I think it would help greatly with efficiency. And we're continuing to grow, and I believe it's about time to do that. That's like my pitch.
So like take the other people out and do the office shuttle.
Yeah.
You want to just put us next to off the fire station, and that's a little further away.
So we could do like this without we just like
together.
Brody can get into the detail that make of it. That's not an option. The council wants to look at doing some revisions on this as well.
Who are those, what's the other company?
All right, that's all I had.
I'm gonna take that over the line.
Thanks. Yep, thank you.
I have animation, but I don't want- I have animation, but I don't want to like.
I appreciate a good animation.
And I just set the bar really high. They're not really good at it.
But do you have slide transitions? That's when you're next level.
Okay, so,
Slide transition.
so just a reminder, what I do. City manager, it's based on the, in Title II in our code. These are the things that are outlined in code that I do. There are other things that I do that aren't necessarily listed, but
Shovel walks.
shovel the front step sometimes, yeah. But you can look in there and see, things that I am charged with. Let's see where one thing I want to focus on is this one right here, implement performance management measures to ensure the city functions as most effective and efficient. And we'll get into this a little bit later, kind of where we're at as a city in our development. And that there's actually another level of performance management and efficiency that this city can take on. And I'll explain that a little bit. But one thing that maybe I know either all of you or at least most of you understand, I'm also the city treasurer and the emergency management director in the city, in addition to the city manager. So right now, this is kind of an outline of the span of control for the city manager, supervise all the departments. That's kind of the bread and butter of it. We authorize the public information communications person, which is going to be advertised pretty soon to hire that position on, now that you've adopted that communications policy. So that will be an additional employee that I will supervise directly. I do not supervise the admin assistant that helps me and the mayor. That position is the legal assistant supervised by Bree. But there is, time spent assigning tasks and following up on tasks and things like that. And it's not a burden. It's actually it's a management extender, helps me do more because she can arrange meetings and things like that. You probably have to. So that's a good thing. That's I didn't. Yeah.
Spell his name, Romero.
He did not. And he did not make this slide. It's just there.
You did make it fun.
It doesn't matter. But it wasn't him.
Is the person on the screen
No.
now?
This was we just completed a citywide organization chart and
We just outsourced it to Novatech.
I don't make a big deal out of it because we all know who we're talking about. So like I said, I also have city treasurer duties that I handle and emergency management director. Okay. So one thing I want to bring about is the whole idea of policy research, performance analysis. These are the kinds of things that if we were able to do, we can take our performance measurement and our efficiency standards and measurement to a new level. Right now, the city pretty much runs on expert opinion. Okay, and that's not a bad thing. There's value in that. But you have questions on something, you ask an expert that is working there, right? And that's all fine and good, but there is another level which allows the city to actually do research on a more profound level. Our experts, which I'm gonna, for purposes of our discussion, I would say are me and the department heads. We do as much research as we can based on the time frame that we have available. And if we actually had a function in the city to do research and analysis, we could probably actually perform that at a higher level than what we do. And as cities grow, they develop the ability to do that type of stuff. And we're getting to that point where, you know, the city operates less like a family and more like a corporation now. And so those kinds of activities are going to be more and more important because the costs and savings and efficiency are going to be more and more valuable. So that would probably be made feasible. We've talked about this in the past of having an assistant manager. I'll show a slide here in a minute of where we're at on that. I'm not proposing that this budget year, but we are tracking that between 2020 and 2025, we would probably need that position. And so, and not just from a workload standpoint, you know, I feel like it's justified right now if we were to hire it from a workload.
I mean, that
standpoint.
really just means 2025 is when you propose it based on.
Fiscal year, yeah.
If you're not proposing it for fiscal
Yeah.
24, then.
Yeah. And so, and that's because of, you know, there's some things that have changed as far as like, we're moving up the new fire station and the costs might, you know, there are other positions that I do believe are valuable and necessary. In supplement. But as far as the assistant city manager goes, it's not just a workload issue, it's what we could do if we had an issue. But I mean, you can talk to the department heads individually one-on-one and ask them, you know, if this would help with my workload and help them in the service that I provide them. And you can get, you know, straight answers from them, whether I'm just blowing hot air. Or...
We already are. Right behind you. They're nodding all in unison.
Right now. So another idea that's floating out there is Clearfield, West Point, Clinton. And I've gone to one of the meetings. They're floating an idea of having a regional emergency management director that would be an employee of one of those cities, but would actually both prepare the EOC, train the staff, have all the supplies and make sure an EOC is in tip-top shape. That would be their dedicated job for all 4 cities. And if there were an emergency, they would be the emergency management director during the emergency. I do that job because it's assigned to me. I'm not an expert in NIMS or anything. I've done enough training to be dangerous and to know what I'm doing. But you know, someone who does it full time is probably going to be more effective.
If there's a regional disaster, how do they pick which city to manage?
I was thinking of.
So, yeah, the way that works and under NIMS, you would combine into a joint EOC. And they would still be the emergency manager over that regional disaster. So in some ways, it makes more sense because right now
Get more resources at your disposal.
yeah, and right now we would, in a regional situation, we could still join, but then we've got 2 emergency management directors kind of like watching each other, and so in some ways it makes more sense to do it that way. We did or Clearfield City did a preliminary estimate on how costs would be divided. If it was done by population, for Syracuse, it was somewhere like around 40 or 50,000. This is taken out of the 2020 staffing plan that we did, and it just shows these are indicators of the need to have an additional employee in the office of the city manager, meaning the assistant manager. And it just shows that we're tracking the projections. So. Okay, getting into our strategic operational plan that we have, I just wanted to, with each of these departments that you've done deep dives with, and they've gotten into kind of how they're achieving these visions, and I think they're doing a superb job. I wanted to take kind of like a 10,000 foot view and kind of look back and see some of the things we've done in the last 2 years regarding, this is our infrastructure. You've been able to put together, new storage tank for water, and that's improved pressure in our secondary park maintenance facility. There's things like turf conversion. And if you have any questions on any of these, we've talked about, but these are also all things that we've been doing over the last few years that have helped make sure we have efficient services and things are well maintained. In vision statement number 2, some of these changes we've had or milestones. We've spent a lot of time doing land deals with UDOT to maximize and optimize our ability for economic development. We went through the Utopia process so that everybody in the city could have high-speed fiber, and general plan and zoning for additional economic development. As far as finances go, and making sure we're financially stable, Steve's been watching things. We were able to refinance bonds for less than 1% interest on our current bond. Our fund balance has improved over the last couple of years. And we've had 2 projects that we planned. One is already being built with no debt. These are huge, these are big developments that we're building with no debt. And then a big one is, this is a low estimate. I was being conservative, so I couldn't be accused of being wrong, but over 14 million in grants have been brought by this management group. And that's probably enough. In addition,
Robert's a big part of that.
yeah. In addition to just their services, which is what they're paid for, just looking at it on a financial level, that's probably enough to pay these people for like the next decade. And that's just in the last couple of years. There will be more grants in the future. We're building them. As far as services that create an overall connection of pride in the city, we've worked on expanding and improving city events. We've fostered additional events such as CPC and Veterans Awards programs. Did you know that we have a city app?
On my phone.
We do. It'll be promoted when we get the communications person online, but you can go to our website under residents and you can see the page. Download. Yeah.
Like we should have known that.
That's the preview.
Why didn't tell you
The
that?
big reveal.
Secret.
One notable milestone I also want to sort of take a step back and just appreciate is through COVID, we had over 1 million deaths in this country due to COVID, over 5,000 in Utah. We did not lose anybody on staff in Syracuse City. And we feel that, this management team took that seriously, especially looking at, the early days of COVID when it was an unknown quantity. They did a very good job of putting together protocols in place on the fly. And we feel that that was a key step in protecting our employees, which we take very seriously. So,
I have one more thing to your list that I'm sure you're proud of. We now have a restroom in every park with a facility or playground.
and
That was
that is
huge.
important.
That is.
It is. Yeah. Okay, Steve brought this up, the office space. So it's not just a space issue. There's actually a few issues that are complicating our space here. One is a logistical issue. We have 4 departments that operate from one desk at the front desk. And with the growth in passports, that was not a contemplated service when this facility was built. But we get a lot of customers at the front desk for passports. We've got building permit people, we've got court people, and there's so much space on the front counter, and sometimes you need a computer to help someone, and it's occupied and that sort of thing. And so there is a logistical problem at the front desk. The space issue is a combination of just real estate and confidential space. So some positions require confidential space. So if you're a supervisor and you have to address delicate issues with employees, you can't do that in a cubicle. You have to have a confidential space to do that. Meeting spaces aren't always available. So that's why we have offices. Right now, we have removed a storage space and turned it into an office. And so as we get new employees, we're going to have to do more of that kind of stuff. Then the third one is the BCI audit, and Bree can probably fill this in a little better than I can. But so Bureau of Criminal Identification, they do an audit periodically on our ability to make sure confidential information remains confidential through our court system. And we have some challenging situations that in the future, or maybe possibly in the present, may not comply.
They would call those opportunities to improve.
Yes, we have a few opportunities to improve in this area where, computer screens can be seen, possibly.
We have areas we are working on now to be in compliance.
Yes.
So we have those screen things shaded.
Just the privacy view screens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
That's one option.
What's your option, Doc?
Well,
Are we gonna address that
we're
here?
still looking into all the options, but one of the issues here is in order to make all that work together, right? Plus additional staff would be to move into the other side of the building. Right now, what we're thinking is CED would move into that side of the building. And so all that traffic and, the permitting and everything, building permits, inspection, work goes on that side of the building. That allows, HR, court, passports, and utilities to operate out of this side of the building. There'd be enough space without doing any modifications and improvements to this side of the building to handle these compliance issues and the confidential space if we did that. If we don't move over there, we'll probably have to propose some physical improvements to this side of the building to make the front desk work. It would probably be,
Some storage sheds out, some white sheds out back.
yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is that the cost of the improvements may include, electrical and that sort of thing. And we might get into where it's, it might be 4 or 5 years worth of that rent. So either way, we'll probably have to make some adjustments. But that's kind of the situation we're bring it to your attention and say, we're open to all options that actually work. We think, this building was designed for government. And moving into the other side would be yeah. There are other options on the table. I mean, we can reduce some services that we offer to create space on this side of the building. We don't have to have a post office. We can reduce post office and move passports into that space. So I mean, there's all kinds of options we can do to make it work, but that's just kind of what we're thinking right now. before I go on, any initial thoughts on that? Like, we're open to like,
You know, we're not doing a post office. That was-
Post office phobia, like I seriously have a post office phobia, and those ladies have made it so comfortable for me to just come in and mail stuff, and that was before I was even on city council, like, I hated going to the post office. They are amazing.
You don't have the most common posters, and that's.
No, that's, no, I don't. Even, shoot. I'm gonna have the equity.
I'm good with keeping the post office if we can get rid of the one at a time in the room.
Yeah, working on it.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Did you know you go to the backside?
I guess what, what I'm saying is like, all options are on the table, we just want to support, right? So, if there's any other suggestions, I'm open to it.
We need an assistant city manager to give us a better analysis of this. Kind of a better suggestions.
Probably not. Not for this.
Well, I mean, this is a pretty simple thing. I mean, the bungalow out back, option A.
I've got an extra dog.
Use our.
You gotta knock that off. I mean, it's pretty simple.
I want to hear about Titan Intranet. Who picked that? I mean, is that because of this high school or?
We got a little creative with
What was
it.
the
It's,
acronym?
I gotta remember now. Technology for internal telecommunications and networking.
It's just an internet.
So it's an internet. But
Didn't like this.
but it was,
Smart it up.
yeah, but it's the foundation to build on into the future.
That's what I have the AI picture right there.
So, yeah, so, what we're keeping an eye out of emerging technologies that I think are gonna transform, some of the stuff that we do. 2 years ago, I brought this up and I was kind of like, it's out there, it's coming, but, it's pretty much here now. And so we're looking at a lot of different options in different areas of the city on how to incorporate that. Things to come. These are, I'm not gonna go through these because I assume you read it in the packet, but these are the goals that you put together at the Golden Tree. So, that's what we're trying to work on in our budget. All these goals. Okay, any questions? Me. We're passing the baton over to.
I do appreciate that you wait more than 10 seconds before you ask if there's any questions. You go.
Noted.
That's the nicest way to say that. Let me see.
That's me, what you see, what you get.
So I'm gonna just throw this out here. It's 5 minutes to 9. And we could extend this item for, I'm starting to lose you, and I can tell that. And it is Noah.
I was angry.
So.
Was that the nicest way to say that?
I could draw this out.
I would like to continue. I'd like to move forward.
Just this.
Okay,
Rip that band off.
Push it off another.
all right, do it. All right, okay, we're in. Noah, let's see what you can do.
Let's go, Noah.
All right. We built a bunch of stuff. We did our best.
Any questions?
I feel like that works.
Level of interest. So I don't know.
Okay, I'll do a little bit longer version. Okay, so what have we been up to? So to meet these visions and both citywide and CED, we've done a lot of planning studies, IBI study. We updated our general plan. We hired Better Cities to help us with economic development strategic plan. Then we consolidated that into our PEP, prioritized economic plan. We did an economic market study for the West Davis corridor. We've been growing really fast in the commercial permits, more than I've ever seen. We've had the highest number of new commercial business licenses. we began the study for the new TIF project area up on SR 193, this typo. And then we've talked about creating a second project area. Those are all related to these goals.
This
Relation-
designs on hold on the 193. Is that?
Yeah, I can update you if that's updated as much as this afternoon. And it looks like that we're gonna have to accelerate that project right now. So we have somebody who's under contract and working on that, and it is much expanded to the original proposal. When it's signed, I'm gonna just tell everybody all about it, but I just know from the city side, we've answered a lot of questions about how we can help and what we can do. And so
This goes back to the fish on the hook before you even.
before we can, yeah. And it was just this week that I got permission to from them that we could use the proposal to start the TIF. Because we have to have their permission to disclose what it is. And so I guess I can because they gave us permission. So Boyer Company is going to build now not one, but 4 10,000 plus square foot buildings, of which 2 already have verbally agreed tenants.
132,000 each.
He said 10,000,
A little bit more.
100,000.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's like the size of the house. Okay.
I didn't put the comma in the right place, so I'm sorry. So yes.
We like the order of magnitude.
These are very large, and we have worked with potential, we've fed them. So through my connections on the base through COG, we fed them some other potential tenants, and they look very positive. So we're gonna have a very major development up there, and we're working on a TIF. Because one of the key components is we're gonna have to help just a little bit with infrastructure. But that little bit does a lot for the city and unlocking some potential for us. And I've kind of mentioned that to several of you as we've talked, so.
All good things.
But yeah, I just updated on that like at 2 o'clock today, so.
As far as vision statement number 3, to be financially stable, balance the cost of services. We adjusted our fee schedule this last year for business licensing. We've had record growth and collected millions of dollars in impact fees that balances out the cost of our fees. And then our sales tax revenue has been up year over year. Even after we've lost RC Willys. Vision statement number 4, as far as events and pride, feelings of connection. So we had a North Davis active transportation plan, which is a multi-city effort that study's been complete. Of course, the wayfinding signage, I think, will bring some connection and pride to the city, and then the plan for the landscape plan at West Davis Corridor is underway, and we'll have some updates on some of their ideas soon. As far as CED vision specific, being knowledgeable and positive, everybody has certifications and belongs to the associations and things like that. As far as communicating well with the business community, we're just about up on a software program called Civic Review, which allows people to apply remotely completely. So in the past, you wanted to do a building permit, you had to bring in a paper copy and over the desk, and so you don't have to do that anymore. We're still working on some of the planning forms, and so that improves communication. Software also kicks back updates, so like when they're done with their plan review, and then there's comments, everybody can see them. Of course, we have good relationships with the West Davis Chamber. And then there's the business summit on the 16th, coming up quickly. This is the
Back
structure.
on that one just for a moment. So recently authorized the welcome package.
Yes,
Gotta throw that on there as well. Have we had anyone take you up on that yet? Or have we offered it yet?
yes, Animal Cycle, our newest business. For calling advice, thank you. They want to do ribbon cutting, grand opening.
Great.
Coming up in March.
I heard from Zupas that they've modified their opening date. It's gonna be March 8th.
We just got an invitation
Oh, did you? Okay.
for Thursday night, friends and families for a Thursday night. You did too. It was during the meeting. That's why I kind of asked. Yeah, I'm like, what we got?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Bree, it was when you were talking, I got excited.
Yeah.
I don't read my email during that meeting.
I couldn't help it.
Anyway,
We
but
offered
I
the same thing to
haven't
them.
got a ribbon.
We're getting the word out.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, so the letters on our website, we're making sure that we have, with all the new businesses, we want them welcome and welcome wagon package is thoroughly applied. But yeah, Zupas is almost done, so. As far as our department structure, I feel like we're at a pretty good staffing level. Right now, our code enforcement officer is part-time, and I know that sometimes we get some complaints about the amount of time it takes for her to get to different complaints and things like that, so.
Is she being requested for full-time? Don't most cities out there, code enforcement, aren't they mostly full-time?
Yeah, I get, we
Compared to
have
size?
budget, you know, I'll be asking for that in our budget.
Oh, sorry, am I jumping ahead?
No, I just don't, I mean, we can talk about it, but I just don't want to get too.
I think we could always justify or, paying somebody to go out and look for problems. We just, in the past, have not pushed it as much.
No, I mean, I think that,
And it's
I don't think it's about sending them out to look for problems. I think we've got enough people calling to let us know about
And
problems
that's what's
that.
changed, is
Yeah.
the request, the incoming has ramped up, especially after COVID.
Yeah, our population has grown, but also we've been more proactive than in past years about this winter parking thing, and that's created a lot of extra work for her. Another update, is our building inspector one, he's resigned, but we hope to rehire him, this summer. So we have the workload, we're gonna hold that off as long as possible. And also we have,
That who we owe it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so we also have the consultant inspector that we've hired and used him as needed basis, but he's not a staff person, that's what the bottom line. I've got some interesting line charts for you guys. So here's our staffing. Like I said, we're here at 11. We're growing. I feel like the inspecting component is probably the most volatile because it's directly tied to the number of permits that we have, and not all permits are equal. So you have commercial permits and you have residential permits, and some, even simple ones like a roof or something. They, different permits require multiple inspections, but the total number is a good indication of how busy we are and how many inspectors are needed. So we've been hovering over that 1,000 mark, which is, record high for us. And this next year, we'll see what we do. But even with the, I guess a little bit of a slowdown at the end of 2022, we still broke 1,000. So that just shows how busy we were earlier in the year. And we were still getting other kinds of permits. So you can see it here. The overall trend line is we're still trending up. We'll see what happens in 2023. The permit types, our bread and butter is the single family.
And that's really heavy on the inspections too, because you have multiple inspections as things are being built. People getting new furnaces and things like that, and then solar has been popular too. And more basement remodels, so those are kind of top ones. If you look, here's the single family permits, like I was saying, is the bread and butter. We still had 347 last year, which is still trending up. I charted all of the permits, so you can kind of see there's generally like a busy season in the summer and spring, and then it dips around, but you can see how the beginning of last year it was just going nuts, and then since about August it kind of slowed down a little bit. In February we had 20 permits though, so it's actually trending back up again. So while single family is trending down, if you take a look at our approved townhomes, we have 583 approved townhome units with 112 buildings. So so far in 2022 we had 14 of those, and so we're going to have, assuming they all go, they're entitled, assuming they go to construction, we are going to have a lot of townhome construction in the next couple of years that we're wanting to get going. And also, as far as apartment projects, we have 38 buildings of apartments with 869 units of apartments. And so if you look, actually, as far as number of buildings, we got hit, obviously, I'm sure you've seen how many apartments are in construction right now. Those 2021 permits are obviously still finishing out with those two big ones built. So that trend will probably go down in the next couple of years, but we still have some more to build. And then, like I was saying, as far as new commercial permits, things like, multi-tenant retail and commercial tenant improvements and stuff like that, those are up. And then that actually mirrors almost identical to new commercial business licenses going up. So while residential might have taken a dip, everything else is like skyrocketing. So I feel like we're just, this next couple of years are going to be very busy. Here's a chart to look at how the winter parking code enforcement tickets went up, how many tickets we wrote compared to the past years. So that
Did this come out that very first snowstorm? Like Officer Hill, when you're like,
no, but they've been pretty consistent throughout the year.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's education too. I think we do have a lot of new residents too. That just
Well, we've had a lot more winter storms, which changed things a lot.
Yep.
I mean, we've had a heavy winter, which is great.
Yeah. As far as planning agendas, we've been remaining pretty steady, maybe above average. Which the planning items are just kind of the beginning of things. They don't go away. Well, at least maybe after, for 5 years or so, they don't go away. And so we're managing those projects through construction. But this gives you an idea of the types of applications that we're seeing. A lot of subdivisions, a lot of rezones, and this text amendment is actually up. This just means that there's been a lot of things that we want to tinker with. And then there's, real estate stuff and, other things that aren't quite as, just kind of pop up, I think with the West Davis corridor, there's been some out of the ordinary things and with RDA purchases and things like that. But overall, we're doing the best we can to manage the high workload, and, it's an exciting time for the city to grow so fast. And the new West Davis corridor, we've got a lot of stuff coming our way.
Thank you for doing that, Sophie.
That was great.
No, you said 11 minutes.
So
I'm excited for Davis corridor.
I will say, in Noah's defense, I've worked for pretty hard the last few months. We have met with a lot of people and a lot of things. It's hard to report, oh, somebody was interested. That has to develop into somebody actually is looking at a property or actually, but we've pushed hard to get out there in the business community and let them know, and it's been
I will say that once the freeway goes in, right now, it is 35 minutes to Farmington during rush hour and 18 minutes to Salt Lake. From Farmington to Salt Lake. So sorry, from Farmington to Salt Lake is 18 minutes and to Farmington is 35 minutes. As soon as that changes, I think you're gonna see a lot more interest in Syracuse as well.
Yeah, when it's less than 15 minutes to get to Farmington because of the highway.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a common metric in economic development, is distance to airport.
Yep.
Especially in the
Yeah. And we're starting to see some of that. That's where like this 4-year deal, one of the reasons that they were willing to look at a bigger space is because some of that interest was coming. We worked with EDC Utah and some of the others to talk about what that really looks like, but that's attracted some interest to the city. So,
That was eye-opening when I saw that, but most of my commute is getting to Farmington.
yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that because I've read teaching that. And that's.
So we're getting to get back to now.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Going down Antelope, all those lights and everything.
Well, Antelope, and then you immediately hit traffic, and on the way home, it's the same thing. You're flying down Legacy at exactly 65 miles an hour. 'Cause why would you do anything else? Oh, yeah, Seth will tell me about it.
I don't know what you're talking about. If you average 98 miles an hour, you just.
Does anybody have any more questions for Noah?
Buckle up, buddy.
Thanks for all we're already working on.
Thanks, everyone.
You guys all work really hard.
Thanks for being here, those of you who didn't have to even present anything.
And you know, the sad part about it is the more you tell us that you do, the more I'm like, oh gosh, I interrupt them all the time. Like, can you answer a question for me? Like, you got nothing else to do. Now I feel bad a little bit.
Change.
Not enough to change.
With your permission, we'll adjourn.
Yeah.
Good.
I am just like.
We are adjourned.